You've made it here, and that's enough. Whatever today held, noise, movement, responsibility, it's already fading. You've done what you could, and now, finally, there's nothing else you need to hold on to. This is your moment to step away from the rush, to allow the weight you've been carrying to settle beside you, even if only for a while. You're not expected to do anything now, not to figure anything out, not to keep going, not to explain or justify how you feel. It's okay to feel tired. It's okay to feel worn out, uncertain, or quiet inside. You've arrived at a place where none of that needs to be fixed. Just noticed. Just accepted. You're safe here. Take a breath that belongs only to you. Let it come and go without effort. This space is for you to sit, to listen, or to simply be. If your mind is busy, let it be busy. If your thoughts wander, let them wander. There's no right way to rest. There's no standard you have to meet in order to deserve stillness. You've done enough. You are enough. Somewhere, not far from here, wisdom waits without urgency. Not to test you or demand answers, but to be beside you like a quiet companion. You don't have to reach for it. It will come in its own time, gently, like the way evening settles into night. For now, all you need to do is rest. Let your shoulders drop a little more. Let your breath stay slow. Let your mind know that there is nothing urgent, nothing missing. You've come to a place where it's safe to reflect, or to drift, or to fall asleep if you wish. You've arrived. Stay as long as you need. There's a quiet strength in realizing that the world does not belong to us, not its noise, not its shifting moods, not its unpredictable turns. It moves according to its own rhythm, with its own logic, often far from our control or understanding. But within this ever-turning world, Epictetus reminds us of a sanctuary that cannot be taken, twisted, or disturbed. He says, "You control your mind, not the world. Let go of the rest." And with those words, something opens, a small, steady place inside that's always been yours. It's easy to forget this. When the day is full of interruptions, misunderstandings, or pressure, it feels like everything depends on your reaction, as if keeping everything together is your task alone. But Epictetus offers a gentler truth. He tells us that most of what we struggle with lies outside of us. It's not the weather, the words of others, the timing of events, or the obstacles that arise that truly cause distress. It's what we tell ourselves about those things. The real tension lives in our interpretation, not the event. And that's where your freedom waits, not in fixing the world, but in guiding your mind. You can decide what to dwell on and what to release. You can notice a thought without following it. You can let someone's opinion pass through you like a breeze without giving it weight. You don't have to grip the world so tightly. You can begin to trust that your mind, with practice and patience, can become a peaceful place, even when the world is not. You don't need to hold so tightly anymore. Epictetus lived as a slave before becoming a teacher. He had no control over his early circumstances, but he found control in how he met them. He trained his mind to recognize what belonged to him and what didn't. And that's what he taught others. Not how to avoid hardship, but how to remain steady in the middle of it. His strength wasn't in changing the world, but in changing his relationship to it. You may not be able to slow the pace of the world around you. You may not be able to change what others say or do. But you can learn to rest your attention in safer places. You can notice when your thoughts are pulling you into battles you don't need to fight. You can begin to return again and again to the only thing that's truly yours, your own reasoned response. There's comfort in knowing you don't have to manage it all. You don't need to anticipate every outcome or solve every problem tonight. Epictetus would say that your task ends where your control ends. Anything beyond that, what tomorrow will bring, what someone else will feel, how the future will unfold, that's not yours to carry. Let it go for now. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. Think about how much energy is spent worrying about things that can't be changed, conversations that haven't happened, judgments that aren't yours, circumstances that arrived uninvited. If your mind is tired, it might be because it's reaching for too much. The world doesn't need to be perfect tonight. It doesn't even need to make sense. You're allowed to step back. You're allowed to rest. This isn't about ignoring what's important. It's about returning to what's real. And what's real, here and now, is simple. You are breathing. You are safe. Your thoughts will come and go, and you don't need to catch them all. Some of them can float by. Others can be gently replaced. And the more you practice letting go, the easier it becomes to stay with what matters. Peace isn't found by changing the world. It's found by loosening your grip on it. Epictetus believed that the highest freedom is inner freedom, not freedom from discomfort or challenge, but freedom from being ruled by them. When you recognize that no one else controls your mind, you become less reactive, less shaken. You begin to feel a stillness that isn't fragile. That stillness is already there in you, underneath the noise, the planning, the doubt. It doesn't need to be created. It only needs to be returned to. So if you're feeling overwhelmed or restless, try this. Ask yourself what part of your worry is truly yours to handle, and what part isn't. Let the second part go, not because it's unimportant, but because it's not within your reach tonight. You are allowed to focus only on what you can do now, in this moment. And if there is nothing to do, then you are allowed to rest. You're not failing by resting. You're not giving up by stepping back. You're making space. Space for clarity, for calm, for gentleness. That's what the mind needs to recover. That's what you deserve after giving so much. This moment is yours. Not the demands of the day, not the opinions of others, not even the uncertain future. Just this one still moment, where your thoughts can soften and your body can release its tension. You can allow quiet to settle over you like a warm blanket. You can give yourself permission to be exactly as you are. You're already enough. The world will keep spinning. People will say what they say. Events will unfold however they will. But your peace doesn't depend on any of that. It depends only on your choice to return to your center, to rest in the part of yourself that remains steady, even when life isn't. Epictetus never promised ease, but he promised strength. And that strength is yours now. Not because you fought for it, but because you've remembered it was always with you. Your mind is yours. Let it rest. Let it breathe. Let it be free from what it cannot control. You've done enough for today. Let the rest go. There are moments when the world inside feels louder than the world outside. The endless stream of thoughts, questions, and what-ifs can become its own kind of noise, soft at first, but persistent, always pulling your focus, demanding your attention. And even when everything around you seems calm, your mind can keep spinning, unsure of how to let go. Marcus Aurelius understood this deeply. He wrote, not from a place of constant calm, but from the center of a busy, burdened life. As emperor, he lived in the middle of conflict, responsibility, and distraction. Yet in the midst of it all, he returned again and again to a quiet, simple truth. Stillness is strength. Step back from the noise of your thoughts. Stillness, to Marcus, wasn't the absence of responsibility or movement. It was the inner pause, the moment between reaction and response. A calm rooted not in what was happening around him, but in what he chose to hold on to inside. When he wrote about stillness, he wasn't suggesting we become passive or detached. He was pointing to a kind of clarity that appears only when we stop trying to control everything. He was reminding himself and us that peace comes not from doing more, but from stepping back just enough to see things as they are. In daily life, that stillness can be hard to reach. The mind rushes ahead, trying to predict or prevent, replay or repair, and that effort, while natural, can become exhausting. The more we try to chase certainty, the further away it feels. But Marcus invites us to stop chasing, just for a moment. He reminds us that the strength we're looking for is already within us. It's just hidden beneath the noise. And that noise, it softens when we stop feeding it. You don't need to figure everything out right now. Stillness begins by noticing. Noticing when your thoughts have drifted into old worries, or when your mind is rehearsing conversations that haven't happened. It begins by taking a small mental step back, not to escape, but to observe. Marcus called this the ability to stand upright without being kept upright. It's the calm that comes when you stop identifying with every passing thought and begin to see them simply as thoughts, temporary, shifting, not commands, just suggestions. Some of them can be let go. There's a certain relief in that, in realizing that you don't need to argue with every thought or solve every puzzle your mind presents. Not tonight. You can choose to be the quiet space in which those thoughts come and go. You can rest in that space, where you aren't required to respond, to act, or to judge, just to be. That, Marcus believed, is where your real power lives, not in pushing, but in pausing. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. Stillness also gives you something more than rest. It gives you perspective. When the mind is noisy, everything feels urgent. Every task, every memory, every unknown becomes a weight. But in stillness, those things begin to shrink. You can see what's truly yours to carry, and what isn't. You can begin to put things down. The anxieties that clung so tightly in the light of day begin to loosen in the quiet of night. What once felt so important starts to feel manageable. Marcus encouraged himself to practice this daily, to retreat into himself, not to isolate, but to recover. He believed that everyone has a place within where they can find calm, no matter what's happening around them. A retreat built not of walls or silence, but of awareness. You carry that retreat within you too. It's here now. You've already stepped into it. Sometimes stillness feels unfamiliar, especially if your mind is used to movement, problem solving, or preparation. At first, the quiet might feel empty, but give it time. Stillness doesn't rush in. It settles slowly, like dust in a sunbeam. And with it comes a deep kind of strength, the kind that doesn't need to shout or defend or prove anything. It simply remains, steady, unmoved. You're allowed to rest in that strength tonight. You're allowed to feel tired without needing to fix the feeling. You don't have to explain yourself to your own mind. Just breathe. Just notice the pause between thoughts. That's where your calm is waiting. And if your thoughts return, as they will, that's okay too. The goal isn't to make the mind silent. The goal is to stop being controlled by its noise, to greet each thought like a passing cloud, not a storm to prepare for. Marcus practiced this again and again, reminding himself that he was not his thoughts, that what made him strong wasn't his ability to control the world, but his ability to return to himself, over and over in the middle of it. So if the day has left you scattered, let this be your gentle return. Back to a slower pace, back to a quieter breath, back to the feeling of being held by something solid and still. You don't need anything else right now. Not answers, not action, just this soft awareness, just this space where you can loosen your grip. Stillness is not something you earned by doing everything right. It's something you remember, something you allow. And in that allowance, something shifts. The world softens. Your body begins to release. Your mind stops fighting the moment. And strength begins to rise. Not the loud, forceful kind, but the kind that sits quietly in the background, holding everything together without effort. You are strong in your stillness. Even when nothing is resolved, even when the path ahead is unclear, even when all you're doing is resting. That, Marcus would say, is more than enough. Let your thoughts drift now. Let them be light. You are not your worries. You are the quiet space beneath them. You are already resting. When the world asks so much of the mind, it's easy to forget that it too has limits. It bends, stretches, adapts, but without care, it grows cloudy. Thought becomes harder to settle. Focus begins to scatter. And the inner clarity that once felt sharp now feels distant, hidden, under the noise of doing and thinking. Seneca, the Roman Stoic, understood this all too well. He once wrote, "The mind must be given moments of leisure to recover its clarity. A gentle reminder that rest isn't something optional or indulgent. It's essential to the mind's health." Seneca didn't see leisure as laziness. He saw it as nourishment, a quiet time that allows the mind to return to itself. He noticed how people are quick to care for their bodies when they're tired or hurt, but often ignore the fatigue of the mind. When thinking becomes constant, even if it feels productive, something is lost. The mind begins to fill with residue. Unresolved worries, half-finished tasks, imagined futures. That clutter slowly dulls our ability to see clearly or feel calm. In those moments, what the mind needs most is space. And space doesn't mean isolation. It doesn't mean silence either. It means giving your mind permission to stop holding on to everything all at once, to loosen its grip, to simply exist without demand or direction. Leisure, for Seneca, meant stepping back not just from work, but from the pressure to always be sorting, solving, managing. It meant sitting with yourself without expectation. You don't need to carry it all into the night. Let the mind soften now. Let it drift a little, without purpose. That's part of recovery, too. Letting thought become less structured, less heavy. There's nothing you need to figure out right now. No list to make. No problem to prepare for. You've spent the day meeting what needed to be met. Now you can gently give that space back to yourself. Seneca believed that moments of leisure were the soil in which wisdom grows. Without them, we become too busy to think clearly, too tired to reflect. He saw people rushing through life, never stopping long enough to ask whether they were rushing in the right direction. He didn't want more hours in the day. He wanted better use of the hours we already have. And some of those hours, he believed, must be spent in true stillness. Not idleness, but deliberate, peaceful pause. That's what you're doing now, choosing pause, choosing not to fill every corner of your mind. That decision, however quiet, is powerful. You're saying, this moment is mine. Not for productivity, not for pressure, just for breathing, noticing, and letting go. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. Clarity doesn't come when we force it. It returns slowly when we stop trying to force anything at all. Like sediment settling in still water, the mind finds its shape again when we stop stirring it. Even now, as your body begins to slow, as your breath finds its rhythm, your thoughts may still drift toward the things left undone. That's okay. Notice them gently. Then bring yourself back to this space, this breath, this ease. Seneca's life was not free from stress. He was a statesman, a writer, a teacher, often caught in the conflicts of politics and power. Yet, he made time every day to withdraw. He treated that time as sacred, not because it looked impressive, but because it preserved something fragile inside him. His ability to think with depth, to live with intention, to meet life from a place of steadiness. He wanted others to do the same. He saw how easy it was to mistake busyness for meaning. He urged people to reflect, to observe themselves honestly, and to remember that no one else will protect their time for them. That task belongs to each of us. And one way to begin is by creating these soft edges to the day, moments like this one, where nothing is required but rest. So if your mind still feels full, don't resist it. Don't try to empty it all at once. Just be here. Let your attention settle where it wants to. Let your breath carry you. If a thought comes, notice it without judgment. If it leaves, let it go without chasing. You're not doing this to be perfect. You're doing it to feel whole again. You don't need to hold so tightly anymore. Think of this time as a gift you're giving yourself, a chance to begin again tomorrow with more calm, more steadiness, more clarity. That clarity is already starting to return, slowly, quietly. Even if you can't feel it yet, your mind is already responding to the space you've given it. It knows what to do with rest. It remembers. Seneca once wrote that nothing suits the soul better than a quiet moment in which to understand itself. That's what you're offering your mind right now. Not solutions, not stimulation, just space. A safe, quiet place to recover what it lost in the noise of the day. And when you wake, whenever that may be, that clarity will be waiting, rested, rebalanced, ready to guide you again, not with urgency, but with calm purpose. For now, though, there's nothing more to do. Let the thoughts slow, let the breath be easy, let the day fall away. You are resting, and that is more than enough. There is a deep peace in doing nothing, not because nothing matters, but because sometimes the world finds its rhythm more easily without force. Laozi, the ancient Chinese philosopher, offered a gentle truth that feels especially important in moments like this. Do nothing, and all things are done. Rest is not laziness, but harmony. It's a reminder that rest doesn't mean giving up or falling behind. It means aligning with the natural flow of life, instead of always trying to push against it. In the Taoist view, harmony is not something we create. It's something we return to. It's already there, beneath the noise and the rush. The more we try to control every detail, the more resistance we create. But when we step back, when we let go of the urge to control everything, a kind of quiet balance emerges. Actions feel lighter. Thoughts become gentler. Life continues, but with less effort. Laozi saw the world as a living current, something that moves and unfolds on its own. The wise person, he believed, doesn't fight the current. They float with it. That's what doing nothing means in this tradition. Not inactivity, but non-interference. Trusting that things will unfold as they should, without constant correction. When we rest, we're not abandoning our path. We're allowing it to carry us for a while. You don't need to hold so tightly anymore. So much of modern life teaches the opposite, that rest is a luxury, or something you earn by doing enough. But Laozi saw it differently. To him, rest is the most natural state of all. Just as a tree does not rush to grow, or a river does not strain to flow, we too are allowed to pause. And in that pause, something essential returns. Not ambition or urgency, but presence. Stillness, in this way, isn't separate from action. It's what makes wise action possible. When we're caught in constant motion, we act from habit, from pressure, from fear of falling behind. But when we rest, we return to clarity. We begin to respond instead of react. And often, when we do less, we discover that things work themselves out in ways we never expected. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. You've done enough today, more than enough. And now your body, your brain, there is a deep peace in doing nothing. Not because nothing matters, but because sometimes the world finds its rhythm more easily without force. Laozi, the ancient Chinese philosopher, offered a gentle truth that feels especially important in moments like this. Do nothing, and all things are done. Rest is not laziness, but harmony. It's even in nature, rest is essential. The sun sets, the seasons turn, the earth renews itself through stillness. And so do you. Laozi believed that when we follow nature's way, we begin to trust timing. We stop trying to force things into place and allow them to take shape on their own. That's not passivity. It's wisdom. It's knowing that peace doesn't arrive through pressure. There's a softness in this kind of trust. You don't need to anticipate the next moment. You don't have to solve anything before morning. You can simply be, in this breath, in this body, in this space that asks nothing from you but to rest. That's enough. And if your thoughts return, if your mind tries to tug you forward, that's okay. Let it be. Let the current carry you gently back to stillness. You're not here to silence every thought. You're here to loosen your grip, to allow harmony, even in the presence of movement. Laozi never tried to change the world through effort. He changed it by showing that effort is not always the answer. That in softening, we become strong. That in yielding, we remain whole. You don't have to resist your tiredness tonight. You can welcome it as part of the balance you've been missing. There's no finish line to reach before you deserve rest. No checklist to complete before you let go. Harmony doesn't wait for perfection. It waits for honesty, for the simple recognition that you are already part of the flow. You always were. Even now, in stillness, you are moving forward, quietly, peacefully, without force. You are allowed to rest. Let your breath slow. Let your muscles loosen. Let the day fade into the background. There's nothing more to manage right now. The world will keep turning. Life will continue to unfold. And you will meet it more clearly, more gently, after you've rested here a while. This is your moment of harmony. Not because everything is resolved, but because you've stopped pushing. Laozi would tell you, the path is already under your feet. You don't need to run. Just walk, or sit, or lie down and close your eyes. Even in stillness, you are becoming. Let go of effort. Let go of urgency. Let go of needing to know. All things are being done, even now. You are already enough. There is a kind of peace that comes only when we stop resisting. When we release the tight hold on our plans, our expectations, our need to be right, or certain, or in control. Zhuangzi, the Taoist philosopher, understood this deeply. He once wrote, "The wise drift with the current, not against it. Stop grasping." And in those few words, he offered an invitation to let go of the tension we carry and float a little more gently through life. Zhuangzi believed that much of our suffering comes not from the world itself, but from the way we try to force it into shapes it was never meant to take. When we resist change, or cling to a fixed identity, or chase control in every moment, we create a kind of friction between ourselves and the world. And that friction wears us down. It makes us tired, anxious, restless. But when we begin to loosen our grip, when we soften our expectations and let things unfold, we discover something surprising. Life doesn't collapse, it continues. And often it moves more smoothly without our interference. You don't need to hold so tightly anymore. Zhuangzi spoke often of dreams, of shifting perspectives, of how little we really know for certain. He found joy in the unpredictability of life, not fear. To him, the goal was not to master the current, but to move with it, trusting that it would take us somewhere worthwhile, even if we didn't understand the path. And that trust begins here, in moments of stillness like this one, when you let your shoulders drop, when you stop reaching for the next thought, when you allow the current of your own life to carry you forward without struggle. This doesn't mean giving up. It means giving in to the flow of things, to the rhythm that's already there. It means recognizing when effort becomes tension, when action becomes grasping. And in that recognition, it means allowing yourself to rest, to drift for a while without needing to steer. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. Drifting doesn't mean aimlessness. It means returning to what's natural. A leaf on water doesn't resist the river. It goes where the river goes. Zhuangzi saw wisdom in this kind of surrender. Not the surrender of weakness, but the surrender of wisdom. A wise person, he believed, doesn't waste energy fighting what cannot be changed. They learn to bend, to adapt, to remain whole, even while everything around them changes shape. And in doing so, they find a different kind of strength, one that doesn't come from control, but from flexibility, from a mind that no longer needs to be certain, and a heart that no longer fears uncertainty. You're allowed to rest in that kind of strength now. You don't have to fix the flow. You're not responsible for shaping every outcome. Zhuangzi also believed that the boundaries we draw between success and failure, between self and others, even between dream and waking, are often illusions. And when we let those boundaries blur, even just a little, we feel more connected, more at ease. We stop trying to define ourselves so sharply. We stop needing everything to make perfect sense. We begin to rest, not only in body, but in spirit. Sometimes the most peaceful thing you can do is to stop grasping at explanations, to let go of needing to understand every part of your day, or your past, or your future. The current doesn't explain itself. It simply moves, and you can move with it, softly, without resistance. Even if your mind still feels busy, that's all right. Don't push the thoughts away. Don't chase them either. Just notice them. Let them pass, like leaves on the surface of a stream. This is not the time to hold on. This is the time to drift, to allow, to breathe without effort. You've done enough today. You've thought enough. You've tried enough. And now your task is to let go for a moment or for the night. There's nothing wrong with floating. There's nothing wrong with rest. Zhuangzi would tell you that even in stillness, you're being carried. Even in silence, there is movement. The current of your life is already flowing. There's no need to paddle, no need to reach for the shore. Let yourself be held by the moment. Let the day fade behind you like a dream you no longer need to interpret. Let the worries soften, the breath deepen, the body unwind. You are not lost, you are simply drifting for now. And drifting is part of the way home. Let your breath follow the rhythm of this quiet. Let your mind begin to soften around the edges. If thoughts return, let them. But remember, you don't have to grasp them. You don't have to follow. You can stay here, in this space, where rest is not something earned, but something natural. Something you were always allowed. Zhuangzi would remind you, the world moves on its own. You don't need to guide it. You only need to stop grasping. And when you do, you'll find yourself carried by something gentler than effort, more reliable than control. You'll find yourself at peace. So let go, just a little more. Trust the current. Trust yourself. Drift. Rest. All things are already moving forward. You don't have to try. You can sleep now. There is a quiet wisdom in doing less, not out of laziness, not from lack of care, but because certain things are best accomplished without force. Taoist teachings speak of this often. In the concept of Wu Wei, effortless action, they describe a way of being where the right response comes naturally, not from pushing, but from presence. Effortless action arises from a rested, untroubled spirit. That's the heart of it. When we stop forcing, when we stop trying so hard to make everything perfect, the right steps begin to show themselves. This idea isn't about passivity, it's about harmony. When your spirit is calm, your actions are clear. When your mind is quiet, you see more. Tension clouds your judgment. Exhaustion turns small problems into heavy burdens. But when you are rested, your natural rhythm returns. You don't have to overthink or overcorrect. You simply act from a place that feels right, without resistance, without confusion, without strain. You don't need to hold so tightly anymore. Think of how water moves. It doesn't rush toward obstacles. It flows around them. It follows the shape of the land. Yet, it always finds its way. That's what Wu Wei means. Not forcing your will onto the world, but moving with the world. Responding without panic. Speaking without pressure. Choosing without fear. And the only way to reach that kind of action is to begin from rest. When the spirit is agitated, action becomes a kind of escape. We do things to distract ourselves from discomfort. We react instead of reflect. But when the spirit is at ease, our actions come from stillness. They don't feel rushed or rehearsed. They come naturally, like a breath. And that kind of action is not only more peaceful, it's often more effective. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. A tired mind struggles to know what matters. A restless spirit keeps moving even when there's nowhere to go. That's why rest isn't optional. It's the foundation for everything else. In Taoist thought, the best way to act is to first stop, to become quiet, to wait until the water settles, and only then, from a place of balance, to move. You're allowed to stop now. You're allowed to let the thoughts slow. Whatever decisions are waiting can wait a little longer. You don't need to solve them from a place of fatigue. You'll see more clearly when your spirit has had time to soften, to rest. And when that clarity returns, your actions will come with ease. Even now, as you breathe gently, you are practicing Wu Wei. You're choosing not to fight with your mind. You're choosing to let things settle. This stillness is not empty. It's preparing you for the next moment. Quietly, patiently. There's no rush, no pressure to perform or prove. You're not behind. You're exactly where you need to be. In the Taoist view, things unfold best when they're not rushed. The tree grows on its own time. The river flows at its own pace. Your life, too, has its own timing. And when you stop trying to rush it, you begin to move with it, not against it. That's the essence of effortless action. Not the absence of doing, but the absence of struggle. So much of our effort comes from trying to be somewhere else, somewhere ahead, somewhere better. But Wu Wei asks you to return, to be where you are, to notice what's in front of you, to act only when it feels true, and to wait without fear when it doesn't. You don't need to chase the moment. You can meet it when it arrives. Right now, there's nothing to chase. There's nowhere else to be. The stillness you're resting in is not a pause between actions. It is the foundation for the next right step. A rested spirit doesn't need to grasp for control. It trusts. It listens. It allows. You are already doing enough. Well, let your breath be easy. Let your body sink a little deeper into comfort. Let your thoughts move slowly, like clouds across a quiet sky. This is your time to rest, to return to the part of yourself that doesn't need to try so hard, that knows what to do when the moment comes, that knows that peace isn't found in control, it's found in release. You don't have to carry the day anymore. You don't have to plan the next one just yet. Let the stillness hold you for now. Let your actions wait. They will come when you're ready, and they will come more smoothly when you've rested. That's the gift of Wu Wei, doing without strain, choosing without fear, moving without pressure. And all of it begins in quiet, in trust, in letting go. You're allowed to rest in this moment. You're allowed to be still. Let yourself drift in that ease. Let your spirit become untroubled, not by effort, but by release. You're already moving with the current now. You're already where you need to be. Sleep if you wish. All things are already beginning. The mind is rarely still. Even in the quiet moments, it can keep spinning, remembering, anticipating, comparing, judging. It holds onto past conversations, future worries, little tasks left unfinished. All of this movement can create the illusion of awareness, but it often drowns out something deeper. Beneath all the noise, there is something softer, waiting to be heard. Buddha pointed toward that space when he said, "Quiet the mind, and the soul will speak." That voice, the one beneath the surface, doesn't shout. It waits patiently for silence. Buddha understood that inner peace isn't something we chase. It's something we uncover. And to uncover it, we need to step away from the constant stream of thought. Not by force, not through discipline or denial, but by gentle attention. When the mind is busy, it fills every corner of our awareness. It makes it difficult to feel grounded. But as the mind begins to settle, other parts of us begin to rise, calm, steady, kind. These are the parts that don't react, don't rush, don't grasp. They just know. They know when to speak and when to stay quiet. They know how to care without needing control. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. When the Buddha spoke of quieting the mind, he wasn't asking us to silence it completely. He was encouraging a kind of softening, a willingness to notice what's happening without being pulled into every thought. The thoughts will come, of course. They always do. But we don't have to follow them. We don't have to chase every fear or replay every memory. We can simply allow the thoughts to appear, like ripples on water, and then allow them to pass. Over time, the water becomes clearer, and in that clarity, something else becomes visible. The soul, in this sense, is not a mystical entity far away. It's the calm, present center of who you are, the part of you that remains steady through every change. When your mind quiets, even briefly, that deeper part can be felt. It may not speak in words, but in sensations, in peace, in a feeling of being exactly where you're meant to be. No performance, no striving, just being. You don't need to hold so tightly anymore. The day may have asked a lot from you. People may have needed your attention, your energy, your patience. Thoughts may have followed you from place to place, demanding resolution or reaction. But none of that belongs in this moment. This is a moment for returning, for softening the edges of your awareness, for listening, not with your ears, but with your presence. Even now, as you rest here, your mind may still be trying to bring things back in, planning, analyzing, remembering. That's natural. But you don't need to follow. You can just notice. You can gently shift your focus away from the thoughts and towards something simpler. Your breath, the weight of your body against the bed, the rhythm of your heartbeat. These are the quiet truths your mind usually talks over. As your attention moves inward, you begin to hear more of what's always been there. A calmness that doesn't depend on solving anything. A gentleness that doesn't judge you for being tired. A clarity that doesn't need a conclusion. These are not things to chase. They emerge when space is made for them. And the space begins with rest. Buddha's path wasn't about escape. It was about understanding, seeing things as they are, without distortion. And what he saw was that the suffering we experience so often begins in the mind, in the attachments we form, the fears we feed, the stories we repeat. By gently quieting the mind, we loosen the grip of those stories. We create enough stillness to see what's underneath them. And what's underneath is not empty. It's kind. It's peaceful. It's enough. You're allowed to let go for a while, to not fix anything, to not know what comes next. This is not a space for answers. It's a space for silence. Not the silence of nothingness, but the silence of presence. The silence that lets the soul speak. Not with instructions, but with ease. If sleep finds you now, let it. If thoughts continue to rise, let them come and go. You're not failing by thinking. You're simply learning how to return, how to be here, quietly, gently, without needing to grasp at anything. This moment holds you. You don't need to reach beyond it. Let the breath be slow. Let the body grow heavier. Let the mind drift, like a boat untied from the shore. There is nowhere else you need to be, no other state you need to achieve, just this one, just here, just now. The soul has been waiting patiently. It doesn't ask for much, only that you stop and listen. And in this stillness, you can hear it, not in words, but in the way your chest softens, in the way your face releases tension, in the way you begin to trust the quiet. Nothing more is needed from you tonight. You've already done enough. Rest now. The mind can rest, the soul will speak, and you are safe to listen. There is a gentle kind of wisdom that doesn't rush, a way of seeing the world not as something to conquer or arrange, but as something that unfolds on its own, if only we are still enough to notice. A Zen saying captures this so simply. Sitting quietly, doing nothing, spring comes, and the grass grows by itself. In these few words, there's a whole world of understanding, a reminder that not everything in life needs to be managed, fixed, or forced. In moments of stillness, something changes. Not in the world around us, but in the way we see it. The mind, which has spent the day measuring, organizing, reacting, begins to slow. It stops reaching for the next thing, and starts to rest in the present moment. And in that stillness, we begin to see that much of what we thought required our constant effort was always going to happen anyway. Grass grows, seasons turn, healing begins, clarity returns. These things are not caused by our striving. They happen when we stop interfering. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. Zen teachings often ask us to trust what is natural, to observe without trying to control. This doesn't mean being passive or uncaring. It means understanding that there is a deeper rhythm to life, one that doesn't respond to pressure. When we sit quietly without chasing answers, we begin to notice this rhythm, and over time we begin to trust it. That trust is where rest begins. You don't need to hold so tightly anymore. The mind often tries to stay ahead, planning, protecting, anticipating. It wants to be ready for anything. But in trying to be ready for everything, it forgets how to be here. And here is the only place where rest can happen. Sitting quietly doesn't just calm the body, it softens the effort inside. It invites us to stop treating life like a problem to solve. It invites us to be a witness, not a manager. In the Zen tradition, great insight often comes not through answers, but through presence. The most profound moments arise when nothing is being sought, when we are simply still enough to notice what has been true all along, that we are part of something larger than our thoughts, that we are allowed to rest in it. Spring does not need our permission to come. The grass does not wait for instruction. Nature moves forward whether we push or not, and we are part of that same nature. We forget this because we live in systems built around urgency. But the deeper truth, the older truth, is that most things do not require our interference to unfold. You are allowed to stop, not because everything is finished, but because it never needed to be finished in the first place. Life will continue to change with or without your constant effort. Resting doesn't mean you're falling behind. It means you're beginning to move in time with something wiser than your thoughts. Let your breath slow. Let your thoughts pass without needing to hold them. If they return, that's all right. Let them move like wind through an open room, felt, noticed, and then gone. You are not your thoughts. You are the one sitting quietly, doing nothing. And in that space, something soft begins to emerge. The same peace that underlies the movement of the seasons. Zen teaches that we don't need to reach for insight. It arrives when the mind is quiet enough to receive it. The more we chase peace, the further away it feels. But when we stop, truly stop, it often appears. Not in the form of big revelations, but in the small ways we begin to feel at home in ourselves. The breath feels fuller, the body lighter, the moment enough. There is a kind of courage in doing nothing. Not the nothing of avoidance, but the nothing of surrender. of letting life carry on without our grip. It's in these moments that we find out how much happens on its own. Healing, growth, understanding. They all come, not through force, but through space. You are already doing enough. Tonight, you can rest in this truth. That sitting quietly, letting go of effort, letting go of thought, is more than okay. It is wisdom in action. The world will not fall apart in your stillness. In fact, much of it will settle into place. Just as the grass grows by itself, so will your sense of balance return. So will your clarity, so will your peace. Let your body relax into the surface beneath you. Let your breath become soft and steady. You don't have to guide anything now. There is nothing more to figure out, nothing more to hold on to. Spring comes, the grass grows. Your rest, too, will take root without effort. This quiet is enough. You are enough. Let the stillness carry you. Let the moment hold you. You don't need to do anything else. So often, we think of peace as something we have to find, somewhere just ahead of us. If only we could move fast enough, get far enough, do everything right. But Thich Nhat Hanh, the gentle voice of mindfulness and compassion, reminds us of a quieter truth. You don't need to arrive anywhere. Peace is already within. It's not something distant. It's not hidden in some future version of life. It's here, now, waiting beneath all the tension, beneath all the movement. Peace doesn't need us to finish the day first. It doesn't ask us to resolve everything before we rest. It simply needs space to be noticed. It's not created through effort. It's revealed through stillness. And in moments like this, when the pace slows and the world quiets, that space begins to open. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. Thich Nhat Hanh believed that presence is the doorway to peace. When we stop racing forward, when we stop waiting for the next thing to make us feel whole, we begin to touch the calm that's always been with us. We don't need to be anywhere else. We don't need to become someone different. The breath you're taking now is already enough. The body you're in is already allowed to rest. You don't need to hold so tightly anymore. There's so much pressure to improve, to fix, to accomplish. Even when we try to relax, we sometimes carry that same urgency with us, as if rest itself must be perfected. But mindfulness isn't about achievement. It's about returning. Returning to the moment, returning to the body, returning to the part of you that doesn't need to change anything to be at peace. When we stop chasing peace, we start to feel it. Your breath moves in and out without needing instruction. Your heart continues to beat without needing reminders. There is a kind of quiet intelligence always at work in you, even when your thoughts are scattered. And the more you allow yourself to settle into that awareness, the more you realize that you're already held, already safe, already enough. Peace, in this way, is not the absence of thought. It's the absence of struggle with those thoughts. It's not about silencing the mind completely. It's about meeting the mind with kindness, letting it think, but not following every thread, letting feelings arise, but not needing to fix them, letting the moment be as it is, without needing it to be anything else. Thich Nhat Hanh often spoke of walking slowly, breathing gently, noticing the small things, a leaf, a sound, a step. He believed that these quiet practices were not trivial. They were the foundation of a peaceful life. And that same approach can be brought into this moment, here, with you. You don't have to walk a perfect path to arrive at peace. You only need to stop running. Feel your breath. Feel the way the air moves through you without judgment. Let your body grow heavier. Let your thoughts become less urgent. This moment, just as it is, holds everything you need. There's nowhere else to go. You're not missing anything by being still. You're allowing something deeper to come forward. Sometimes we imagine peace as something far away, a place we'll reach when we've earned it. But Thich Nhat Hanh would say, it's already within you. You only have to stop covering it up with busyness, with worry, with comparison. The more you soften, the more that peace begins to rise on its own. You are not late. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are resting, and that is enough. Let yourself stay here a little longer, in this quiet, in this breath. Let yourself remember that you don't need to fix anything before you're allowed to feel whole. Peace isn't a reward for doing enough. It's something you return to when you stop needing to prove anything. The day has passed. The work is done. Or, if it's not, it can wait. You've given enough. You've thought enough. You've tried enough. Now you can release the pressure to move forward. You can sink into the truth that this moment is complete. Peace is not found at the end of a task. It lives in the pause between efforts, in the space between thoughts, in the permission you give yourself to rest without guilt. You don't need to arrive anywhere. Let go, breathe, be still. You're already home. Sometimes we carry too much, not just in our hands or on our schedules, but in our minds, in our hearts. Old mistakes, passing fears, worries that cling like leaves long past their season. Rumi, the mystic and poet, offered a simple image to help loosen that hold. He said, "Be like a tree, and let the dead leaves drop. Let your worries fall." With those few words, he gives permission to release, not out of carelessness, but from trust. Trust that what is no longer needed can be let go without loss. Trees don't cling to what no longer serves them. As seasons turn, they shed the old without resistance, not because it's easy, but because it's time. They don't question each leaf. They don't gather them back after they fall. They simply let go and wait for new life to arrive in its own time. In the same way, there are thoughts, memories, and habits that no longer nourish us, things we've held too long out of fear, habit, or self-doubt. But we don't need to carry all of it through every season. You don't need to hold so tightly anymore. Rumi wasn't asking for forgetfulness. He wasn't asking us to pretend that hurt never happened. He was pointing toward something deeper, an inner stillness that comes when we stop identifying with every passing worry, when we stop feeding the stories that only drain us. Letting go doesn't mean ignoring what's real. It means honoring what's real right now and allowing what no longer fits to gently fall away. The mind often holds on because it believes it must, that letting go would be unsafe, that we need every worry just in case. But the body knows better. It knows when it's time to release. Sometimes when you rest, you can feel it. A small unwinding in your chest, a sense of ease in your breath, a quiet whisper that says, "It's all right now." You don't need to keep that anymore. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. So much of rest is about permission. The permission to not be thinking all the time, the permission to not be fixing everything, and maybe, most of all, the permission to let go of what has already run its course. Rumi invites us to imagine that letting go doesn't have to be dramatic. It can be natural, unforced. Just as a leaf, when its time is done, loosens from the branch without effort. The worries that followed you into the day don't need to follow you into the night. The questions you couldn't answer don't need to be solved before you sleep. The weight you carried is not a test you must pass. You're allowed to put things down. You're allowed to rest with your hands open. And if you're not sure how to begin, start with one thought. Just one that feels a little too heavy. Notice it, and then notice the part of you that wants to hold it. Then ask if maybe, for just tonight, you can let it fall. Just for now. Just until morning. You don't have to fix every part of yourself before you deserve peace. You don't have to have it all figured out before you rest. The tree doesn't know what spring will bring, but it lets go anyway. Trusting that letting go is not the end of life, but the beginning of rest. And rest, too, is a form of renewal. There may be parts of your day that didn't go the way you hoped. That's okay. There may be parts of your past that still feel unfinished. That's okay, too. None of it needs to be carried right now. You're not being asked to forget. You're being invited to rest. Let your shoulders soften. Let your breath settle. Let the old thoughts fall away, like leaves returning to the earth. You don't need to name every one. Just feel the weight growing lighter. That is enough. Even if you feel unsure, even if the mind keeps bringing things back, gently return to the rhythm of letting go. Not as a task, but as a choice. A quiet, loving choice to stop grasping what doesn't serve you tonight. A choice to trust that your peace doesn't depend on holding it all together. Rumi's words are not rules. They're reminders. You are allowed to move through life gently. You're allowed to shed what is heavy. You're allowed to rest without holding every story, every outcome, every explanation. The day is ending. The mind can slow. You've already done enough. And now, like the tree, you can be still. Let what is ready to fall, fall. The rest will wait. The world will keep turning. You're safe here even in quiet. Let the leaves drop. Let the breath be easy. Let the night carry you into peace. You're already where you need to be. Sometimes, the search for answers can become louder than the answers themselves. The more we try to prove, explain, and debate our way to understanding, the more tangled things can feel. Al-Ghazali, the Islamic philosopher and mystic, offered a gentle reminder that truth doesn't begin in noise. He wrote, "True knowledge begins in silence, not in argument." In that quiet statement, he pointed to something we often overlook, the deep clarity that comes not from talking, but from listening. Not from trying to win a point, but from allowing stillness to show us what matters. The world encourages argument. It rewards sharpness, quick thinking, certainty. But Al-Ghazali saw wisdom in the opposite direction. He believed that real understanding lives beneath the surface, where the mind is not trying to convince anyone, not even itself. When we fall silent, not just on the outside, but inside too, we begin to notice truths that don't need to be shouted. We begin to feel a kind of knowing that has nothing to prove. You don't need to hold so tightly anymore. This doesn't mean that questions are bad, or that speaking has no place. Al-Ghazali asked many questions himself, but he came to see that the answers we most need often come only after we've stepped back, after we've allowed the noise of our opinions to settle. When we stop reaching for the next word and let our minds become quiet, a different kind of clarity begins to rise. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. The mind is like a still pool. When it's stirred with too much argument, too much urgency, the surface becomes cloudy. But when we sit quietly, When we wait without chasing, the water clears. We begin to see not just what's on the surface, but what lies beneath. Al-Ghazali's path led him away from debate halls and into retreat. Not because he gave up on seeking truth, but because he realized that silence makes room for truth to appear on its own. Even now, in the soft quiet of this moment, your thoughts may still be reaching, still trying to organize or conclude. That's natural. But you don't need to follow every thought. You don't need to answer every question tonight. You can let some of them go unanswered for now. Not because the answers don't matter, but because they will come when the mind is rested, when the heart is open, when you're no longer trying so hard to find them. Al-Ghazali believed that wisdom doesn't need to be defended. It emerges when you stop interrupting yourself with doubt, when you stop thinking only to respond. He taught that silence is not a lack of thought. It is a deeper kind of awareness, one that listens not just to words, but to what exists beneath them. You are allowed to rest in that kind of listening now. You're allowed to stop trying to make everything make sense before the day ends. There is no urgency in understanding. The truths that matter most do not disappear when you stop thinking. They become clearer. They soften into view. If your mind is tired, if your thoughts feel heavy, it may be because they've been trying too hard to arrive at certainty. But not all clarity comes from effort. Some of it comes from release. Some of it comes from trusting that silence is not emptiness. It's space. Space where something deeper can speak. Let your breath guide you now. Let your body become heavier. Let the thoughts that rise pass without needing to be answered. They can return later, if they need to. But for now, give yourself the gift of stillness, the kind that Al-Ghazali returned to after years of searching, the kind that speaks not in words, but in peace. This is not the time for figuring things out. It's a time for letting things be, for allowing the mind to stop reaching, for allowing yourself to rest without needing to make sense of everything. You've thought enough today, you've searched enough, and now you're allowed to be still, to listen, not for answers, but for calm. True knowledge, Al-Ghazali said, begins in silence, not because silence gives you all the answers, but because it teaches you how to see more clearly. It slows the rush, it untangles what felt complicated. It shows you that the most important truths are not always the ones we explain, but the ones we feel with our whole being. Let your mind be quiet now. Let the silence wrap gently around your thoughts. Let the questions rest where they are. They don't need to be solved before sleep. You're already close to what matters. You're already resting in it. Sleep if it comes. Be still if it doesn't. This silence is enough. You are enough. There are truths that only stillness can show. In the rush of daily life, with its noise and motion and constant tasks, certain things remain hidden. Subtle things, quiet things, feelings that were never named, thoughts that never had time to settle, insights that were there, just waiting for a pause. Ibn Arabi, the Sufi philosopher and mystic, understood this deeply. He wrote, "Stillness reveals what movement conceals." In those few words, he reminds us that some forms of understanding only arrive when we stop moving. The mind is quick to fill every moment. It jumps from one task to the next, one thought to another, one responsibility to another. That movement often feels necessary. It gives us the sense of progress, of doing something important. But sometimes it's in that constant motion that we lose sight of ourselves, the deeper part of the self doesn't speak in urgency. It waits. It waits for quiet. It waits for stillness. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. Ibn Arabi believed that there is a reality beneath appearance, one that isn't always accessible through action. He taught that the visible world often distracts us from the unseen, not because the visible is false, but because it moves too quickly for us to recognize what's underneath. In movement, we manage. In stillness, we feel. In movement, we perform. In stillness, we understand. You don't need to hold so tightly anymore. Sometimes we think rest is wasted time, that if we're not doing something, we're falling behind. But the truth is, stillness isn't the opposite of progress, it's part of it. In stillness, the mind has space to breathe, the heart has space to speak, the soul has space to unfold. And often, the insights we seek in our hurry come softly, in quiet moments when nothing is being forced. There may be thoughts tonight that feel unresolved, or emotions that you've been carrying without words. They don't need to be solved right now. They only need space. Stillness isn't about fixing what's broken. It's about seeing clearly what's already there. And when you slow down enough to see, you begin to understand things that no amount of thinking or doing could reveal. Ibn Arabi didn't see stillness as withdrawal. He saw it as openness, a way of being more present, more aware, more attuned to the deeper layers of existence. And those layers are here with you now. They don't require effort to access. They only require that you stop trying to control every moment, that you allow yourself to rest, not just physically, but inwardly, to stop running, mentally or emotionally, to stop rehearsing, solving, managing. Let yourself be still. The body already knows how to rest. The breath already knows how to slow. Your thoughts may not settle right away, and that's okay. Stillness doesn't demand silence. It only asks for space. Even if the thoughts keep coming, you don't need to follow each one. You can let them pass, like footsteps in the distance. You can stay here, grounded, calm, without needing to chase them. Movement conceals not because it's wrong, but because it's fast. It keeps us just ahead of ourselves, always thinking about what's next. But now, in this quiet space, you are invited to stop, to return, to notice the feeling of your breath, the weight of your body, the present moment where nothing is required from you. Ibn Arabi often wrote about the heart as a mirror, reflecting what is placed before it. But when the heart is constantly moving, the reflection becomes blurry. In stillness, the image becomes clear again. And sometimes what we see in that clear reflection is gentler than we expected. We see that we are not as lost as we thought, that we are not as alone, that we are already whole, even in our uncertainty. You're not expected to solve anything right now. You're not expected to arrive anywhere. Stillness is not a destination. It's a way of seeing. And in seeing clearly, you begin to remember things you may have forgotten. That you are safe, that you are enough, that you don't have to try so hard to be okay. The world outside may still be moving, but you don't have to match its pace. Not tonight. Let yourself be slow. Let yourself be quiet. Let whatever is underneath the noise rise gently to the surface, not to overwhelm you, but to remind you of your depth. You are more than your actions. You are more than your thoughts. There is something steady beneath all of it. Let that steadiness hold you now. Lose their urgency. This stillness is not empty. It's full of things you've been too busy to feel. Comfort, memory, clarity, forgiveness, peace. You don't need to chase anything tonight. Stay in the quiet a little longer. let it speak. Not with words, but with feeling. Let it remind you of what movement made you forget, that you are already rooted, that you already belong, that even when life is uncertain, there is a calm place inside you that knows how to wait, how to listen, how to rest. Sleep if it comes. Stillness will hold you either way. You don't have to reach for it. You are already in it. You are already enough. There are moments when stepping away from the world feels like a retreat, and others when it feels like a return. The early Christian monks known as the Desert Fathers understood this deeply. Living in quiet solitude, they weren't running from life. They were making space for something deeper. One of them offered a simple invitation. Go sit in your cell, and your cell will teach you everything. In this, they weren't pointing to the walls around them, but to the still, undisturbed space where the soul begins to speak. That quiet place can exist anywhere, even here, even now, even in the space you've made to rest. Sitting in the cell wasn't about punishment or exile. It was about honesty. A small room with no distractions has a way of bringing the mind face to face with itself. There's nowhere to hide in stillness, no role to play, no task to complete. And in that emptiness, the most important parts of you begin to rise, not because they were lost, but because they were waiting for quiet. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. There's something uncomfortable, at first, about being still. The mind wants to move, to solve, to analyze. It resists the quiet. But if you stay long enough, if you give yourself permission not to respond to every thought, something shifts. The thoughts become less loud, the feelings become less tangled, and beneath all that, you begin to hear your own heart again. You begin to feel the simple weight of being alive, of being whole, of being enough. You don't need to hold so tightly anymore. The Desert Fathers believed that solitude was a kind of mirror, a place where you could finally see what you'd been carrying, not to judge it, not to escape it, but to be with it, to understand what belongs and what doesn't. In the quiet, they discovered that many of the burdens they thought were necessary were only habits, ways of thinking, reacting, controlling. And when they let those things go, even just for a little while, peace entered in. You don't have to be far from life to enter that same kind of stillness. You only have to pause. You only have to make space for it. Tonight, that space is here. Not in a stone-walled cell in the desert, but in the room around you, in the breath within you, in the quiet that asks nothing from you but presence. When you sit quietly with yourself, your thoughts may come quickly at first, but you don't need to wrestle with them. Let them pass, like footsteps fading in the distance. Let the old emotions rise and settle again. There's no need to fix them. Stillness is not about changing anything. It's about allowing everything to be seen without judgment. The Desert Fathers trusted that the cell was enough, that silence was enough, that solitude was not a problem to be solved, but a teacher to be welcomed. And in that simplicity, they found something deeper than comfort. They found clarity, and they found a sense of peace that came not from having everything resolved, but from being fully present with what was already there. Right now, you don't need to solve your life. You don't need to plan the future or make sense of every thought. The cell is not a place of answers. It's a place of recognition, of seeing what is and learning how to sit with it gently, of letting the silence do its quiet work. Even in your rest, the silence is teaching you. It's showing you how to soften, how to breathe more slowly, how to listen without reacting. It's reminding you that rest doesn't come from getting everything done. It comes from letting go of the need to get everything done. The solitude the Desert Fathers found wasn't lonely. It was full of their own presence, full of grace, full of the small, subtle truths that only emerge when we stop reaching for them. That kind of fullness is available to you now, not through effort, but through release, not through striving, but through stillness. Let yourself rest in that quiet. Let the breath come and go without effort. Let your thoughts grow softer around the edges. The cell teaches not through explanation, but through experience. The longer you remain, the more you begin to feel what doesn't need to be carried anymore, what can be set down, what was never really yours to begin with. The silence is not empty. It is full of the things you were too busy to notice. Stay here a little longer. Let the stillness settle over you. You don't need to be anyone right now. You don't need to prove anything or protect anything. This is your space, your moment, your breath. Let it be simple. Let it be quiet. Let it be enough. And if the mind returns to its movement, that's all right. You don't need to chase it. Just return. Again and again, gently to the quiet, like returning to a safe room where nothing is asked of you. You are already resting in it. You are already learning, even in stillness. Let go now. Let the quiet hold you. You've entered the cell, and it will teach you everything. There is a quiet place within each person that often goes unnoticed. It isn't loud or urgent. It doesn't push for attention. It waits patiently beneath the layers of thought, emotion, and noise. Meister Eckhart, the Christian mystic and philosopher, pointed gently toward this space when he said, "The quieter the soul becomes, the more it is able to hear." Not hear in the ordinary sense, but in the deeper way, where clarity, calm, and understanding begin to emerge on their own. All day, the mind takes in so much information, voices, interruptions, decisions. And often, we meet it all with our own inner noise, thoughts about what should be done, what might happen, what others expect. It's no wonder the soul feels crowded. The noise doesn't always come from outside. Much of it lives in the space between our own thoughts. But underneath that noise is something softer, still, attentive. You don't need to hold so tightly anymore. Meister Eckhart believed that the soul isn't filled with wisdom by accumulation, but by emptying. Not through adding more, but through creating space. When the soul quiets, it begins to receive, not with effort, but with openness. That's when it begins to hear, not the chatter of opinions or the echo of fears, but something more essential, the quiet pull of truth, the gentle sense of what is right, the quiet awareness of being deeply, simply present. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. It doesn't take a perfect state of mind to begin this quiet. It only takes a pause, a willingness to stop chasing thoughts, a soft breath, a small shift inward. You may still hear your thoughts, and that's okay. Quieting the soul isn't about silencing the mind completely. It's about letting the thoughts pass through without needing to catch them. It's about loosening the grip on every idea that arises and resting instead in the stillness beneath. Sometimes we look for direction in more effort, more reading, more answers, more thinking. But Meister Eckhart knew that the clearest answers often come not when we try harder, but when we stop trying, when we fall into quiet, not as a goal, but as a homecoming, when we allow the soul to grow calm enough to notice what has been speaking all along. Even now, that space is here with you. It hasn't gone anywhere. It doesn't need to be earned. It's always been there, waiting for the mind to settle, for the body to rest, for the moment to arrive when you finally stop needing to fix everything. You are not here to solve tonight. You are here to soften. You are here to listen gently, without pressure. The quieter the soul becomes, the more it is able to hear. What it hears is not dramatic. It is not always words or visions. Sometimes it's just a knowing, a feeling that something is right or kind or peaceful, that you are safe, that you are not as far from yourself as you may have felt earlier in the day. In that quiet, the soul remembers. It remembers how to rest, how to trust, how to return to what matters. Let your breath slow down now. Let your body become heavier. If thoughts return, let them pass without judgment. You don't need to follow them tonight. You don't need to respond. The soul hears better when it doesn't have to defend, explain, or prepare. This is not a time for response. It's a time for receptivity, for quiet presence. You are already closer than you think. Meister Eckhart didn't find truth in constant activity. He found it in surrender, in the calm openness of a heart that no longer needed to control every outcome. He trusted that the soul knows what to do when it is still, that it knows what to release and what to hold, that it knows how to come home to itself. And so do you. Let the weight of the day fall away. Let go of the need to understand everything before sleep. Let go of the tension in your jaw, in your chest, in your hands. Let the soul grow quiet, not because it is finished thinking, but because it is ready to listen. Stay in that quiet a little longer. Nothing needs to be spoken. Nothing needs to be named. The quiet itself is enough. The silence carries its own wisdom. You don't have to ask anything of it. Just be with it. Let it wash over you, like a gentle tide returning again and again, carrying only stillness. You don't need to do anything else. Let the soul be quiet. Let the quiet speak. Let rest come. You are already listening. You are already enough. There's a kind of knowing that words can't reach. A kind of presence that slips quietly past thought, past definition, past anything we can hold in the mind. Thomas Merton, the Trappist monk and writer, spent much of his life exploring that quiet place. He once wrote, "In silence, God ceases to be an object and becomes an experience." In those few words, he offers a gentle shift, not from belief to disbelief, not from thought to emotion, but from concept to closeness, from thinking about something to simply being with it. All day long, the mind tries to hold on to things. It names, categorizes, compares. Even when we think of peace or love or God, we often do so through ideas. But ideas are only shapes. They point towards something deeper, something softer. And it's in the silence, not the silence of emptiness, but of presence, that this deeper experience begins to open. Not as something to understand, but as something to feel. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. Merton believed that silence is not the absence of sound, but the fullness of attention. When we are quiet, not just outside, but within, the world begins to feel different, softer, slower, less separate. The distance between ourselves and what we long for begins to fade. There's no longer a need to explain or define, no need to reach. You are simply there, with whatever is real in the moment. And that, he said, is where the experience of the divine becomes possible. You don't need to hold so tightly anymore. Rest is a kind of doorway to that silence. When the body softens, when the mind releases its grip, when you stop trying to earn your place in the world, something else begins to come forward. not as a thought or belief, but as a quiet sense of connection, a sense that you are not alone, that something larger is holding you, not watching or judging, but simply present, like breath, like stillness, like the silence itself. Merton didn't teach that this experience required perfection or distance from the world. He wrote from within it, aware of struggle, of noise, of longing. But he learned that the way through it wasn't always more effort. Sometimes it was stillness, deep listening, the kind that doesn't ask for answers, the kind that waits patiently until something sacred begins to rise. Right now, there is nothing more you need to do. You don't need to believe anything. You don't need to search. All that's asked of you is this stillness, this gentle return to your breath, to your body, to the quiet space behind your thoughts. The mind may still be busy. That's okay. Thoughts will move in and out. They don't need to be pushed away. You can simply let them be. And underneath them, the silence will still be there, not broken by your thinking, just waiting, patiently, for your attention to soften again. Sometimes, what we call God is not a figure or idea, but a feeling, a sense of being connected, grounded, seen, a sense that we belong, even when we're unsure. And that sense doesn't come when we strive for it. It comes when we stop, when we let go of effort and fall gently into presence. Let yourself rest in that now, not to achieve anything, not to reach a spiritual insight, but simply to be quiet, to be still, to notice that you are already held by something you don't have to name. This silence is not emptiness. It's alive with meaning, and the more you stay with it, the more it reveals. The more the sharp edges of thought begin to fade, and what remains is a quiet knowing that you are here, that you are enough, that something loving is with you, not far away, not separate, but as close as breath, as steady as sleep. Thomas Merton believed that prayer wasn't always words, that sometimes the deepest prayer is simply being still in the presence of what we do not fully understand, not trying to master it, not trying to explain it, just resting in the mystery, and finding in that rest a peace deeper than answers. You can let yourself rest in that now. You don't need to have it all figured out. You don't need to be certain. The silence doesn't demand anything from you. It welcomes you as you are. Let your breath be slow. Let your thoughts float, weightless. Let the silence settle around you like a soft blanket. Nothing more is needed. You are not alone. You are not forgotten. You are not unfinished. You are already resting in something sacred. Let that be enough. Sleep if it comes. Be still if it doesn't. The silence is already working in you, quietly, patiently, without asking anything in return. There is a certain kind of effort that wears the soul down, not because the task is too great, but because the heart becomes tangled in the result. It begins to measure itself by what happens next, by success or failure, by recognition or disappointment. Krishna, speaking in the Bhagavad Gita, offered a gentle shift away from that heaviness. Act without attachment. Rest in the self. In these few words, he opens a path toward peace, one where the act is enough and the outcome no longer owns us. This doesn't mean we stop caring. It doesn't mean we do nothing. Action still matters. Doing what feels right, showing up, moving through the day. These things carry meaning. But Krishna invites us to untie the knot between our effort and our identity. He reminds us that who we are is not measured by what happens after the action is done. We are not defined by the outcome. And when we let go of that attachment, something deep within us relaxes. You don't need to hold so tightly anymore. Resting in the self means returning to that calm place inside, the part of you that doesn't shift with the day's results, the part that doesn't need a reward to feel whole. It is already enough. It is steady, even when life is not. When you act from that space, your movements are lighter. You still care, but you don't cling. You still try, but you don't chase. And when the task is done, you let it go. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. Sometimes the hardest part of the day is not the doing. It's the after. The waiting, the wondering, the measuring. But you're allowed to release all of that now. Whatever you did today, however it unfolded, you can set it down. The action has already happened. The rest is not in your hands. And that's all right. You've given your effort. Now you're allowed to give yourself rest. Krishna's teaching wasn't cold detachment. It was a loving invitation to return to inner stillness. To remember that peace doesn't live in the future. It lives in this breath, in the quiet space beneath the surface of worry. And the more you return to that space, the more freely you can live, not weighed down by fear of failure, not pulled by the need for praise, just present, just calm, just at ease. Let yourself feel that now. You don't need to be anywhere else. You don't need to explain yourself to the moment. It welcomes you exactly as you are. Your breath is enough. Your being is enough. You've already done what you could today. That is enough. The more you rest in the self, the less you need the world to validate you. Not because you don't care, but because you've remembered something deeper. That your worth is not on trial. That your value doesn't rise and fall with how others respond. You exist beyond all of that. Quiet, whole, steady, just like the still point in the center of a wheel. And from that stillness, action becomes simple. You do what you can, with care and attention. You offer it, and then you release it. No gripping, no chasing, just trust. Trust that what needs to unfold will unfold. Trust that your peace is not waiting at the finish line. It's already here. Let your breath be your anchor now. Let each exhale remind you that you can release the day. Let each inhale remind you that you are already full. You don't need to strive in this moment. You don't need to earn anything. Resting is not giving up. It's returning to what's real. Krishna's voice is not demanding. It's kind. It points gently inward. Not toward retreat from life, but toward alignment with it. When you stop clinging to outcomes, you begin to act from freedom. When you stop needing everything to go a certain way, you begin to experience peace in the middle of motion. And that peace is always here, just beneath the noise. You are allowed to rest in it now. Let go of the weight of unfinished things. Let go of the wish for everything to be clear. Let the heart settle. Let the breath soften. The self is still here, unshaken, watching the day pass like a river. You are not the river. You are the one who sees it flow. Stay in that calm a little longer. Let it hold you. There is no rush. Nothing is missing. You have already arrived. Act without attachment. Rest in the self. Let those words move gently through you. Let them loosen the knots you've been carrying. Let them remind you that peace doesn't need to be found. It only needs to be remembered. You are already resting in it. Sleep if it comes. Stay quiet if it doesn't. Let your presence be enough. Let the moment be complete. You are safe. You are whole. And you are already home. The mind doesn't always know how to rest. It moves like water stirred by wind, rippling with thoughts, memories, distractions, and restless concerns. Even when the body is still, the mind often continues its quiet chatter, drifting from one idea to the next. But Patanjali, the ancient sage of yoga, offered a simple direction. Yoga is the stilling of the fluctuations of the mind. In that stillness, he believed, lies a deeper kind of peace. Not something to be found outside of us, but something already present, waiting beneath the surface. This stillness is not a command to stop thinking. It's not a demand for silence. It's a soft invitation to let the mind settle, to allow the noise to grow quiet, like waves gently fading on a calm shore. In this quiet, the mind no longer pulls you from thought to thought. It no longer defines who you are by what you're feeling or fearing. You begin to rest in the awareness that exists behind the thoughts, the part of you that watches, listens, and simply is. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. You don't need to follow every thought that passes through your mind. You don't have to untangle every idea before sleep. Some thoughts are just movement, temporary ripples, and when you stop chasing them, when you stop trying to manage or complete them, they begin to slow on their own. Patanjali understood that this kind of quiet isn't forced, it's allowed. It arises when we no longer identify with every fluctuation, when we no longer mistake the storm for the sky. Yoga, as Patanjali described it, is not just movement or posture. It is a way of being still, inside and out. A way of remembering that you are not your restlessness, you are not your fatigue, you are not even your thoughts. You are the one watching all of it. And the more gently you watch, the more softly it all begins to settle. You don't need to hold so tightly anymore. Even now, your mind may still be moving. That's okay. Stillness isn't a goal you have to reach. It's a direction you turn toward. One breath at a time, one small surrender at a time. You can feel the body softening with each breath. You can feel the weight of the day beginning to ease. You're already doing enough. The fluctuations of the mind are natural. They come and go, like wind through trees. But they don't have to define your state. They don't have to be followed or feared. When you stop resisting them, when you stop engaging every story they bring, they begin to lose their power. They settle simply because they're no longer being stirred. Patanjali's wisdom wasn't about suppressing thought. It was about resting in awareness so deeply that the thoughts no longer pull you away from yourself. When that happens, even briefly, something opens. A sense of calm that doesn't depend on answers. A presence that isn't tied to performance. A peace that doesn't need conditions. Let yourself rest in that now. Let your breath slow down. Let your body become heavier. Let the inner movement begin to quiet, not by force, but by softness, by not chasing, by simply being here. You've already begun to practice this stillness just by noticing it. Each time your mind drifts and you gently return, you're practicing. Each time you let a thought pass without gripping it, you're practicing. Each breath that you let be as it is, without trying to shape it, is a step toward rest. And over time, the mind learns. It learns that it can soften, that it doesn't need to push, that it doesn't need to protect you from every thought or memory. It begins to trust the stillness. It begins to feel safe in the quiet. Let the breath come easily now. Let it guide you inward to the part of you that isn't stirred by every ripple. The part that watches, the part that knows you're already okay, already whole, already resting. Patanjali believed that in the quiet of the mind, we come into contact with our true nature, not a better version of ourselves, not a fixed or polished version, but the self that exists when the noise fades, the self that simply is, spacious, calm, aware. That self doesn't need to prove anything. It doesn't need to control what happens next. It only needs room to be seen. So give yourself that room now. Let the outer world fall away. Let the inner world grow calm. Let the stillness be enough. You don't need to make it perfect. You don't need to arrive at a certain feeling. You're allowed to be exactly as you are, resting in exactly what is. Stay here if you wish. Let the breath stay soft. Let the thoughts keep drifting. You don't need to fix anything. Just remain in the quiet space behind the movement, the part of you that was never stirred, the part that has been waiting patiently for your return. This is what Patanjali meant. Not the elimination of thought, but the resting in something deeper. In this space, even the mind can rest, and so can you. The mind is always offering something, a thought, a memory, a question. Some thoughts arrive quietly, others come with urgency, dressed in emotion, asking for attention. It's easy to believe that we are these thoughts, that whatever arises in the mind must be who we are. But the teaching from Advaita Vedanta reminds us of something deeper. You are not your thoughts, you are the witness behind them. This simple truth can feel like an opening, a space, a soft doorway into peace. Thoughts are not a problem. They're natural, like waves on the surface of a vast ocean. But just as the waves aren't the ocean itself, your thoughts aren't the whole of who you are. Beneath the surface, there is stillness, and you are that stillness. You are the space in which the thoughts appear and disappear. You are the one who sees them rise. You are the one who notices. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. The mind may still be busy. It may still offer you thoughts about today or tomorrow. That's okay. The goal isn't to force the thoughts away. It's to realize that you don't have to follow each one. You can observe without clinging. You can notice without reacting, like sitting on a quiet hill, watching clouds drift across the sky. They come and go. You remain. You don't need to hold so tightly anymore. When a difficult thought appears, the habit is often to believe it immediately, to feel the worry it brings, to react as if it were a fact. But with gentle awareness, something shifts. You begin to see the thought as something separate, something passing. And in that moment of recognition, there's space to breathe, to rest. You're not ignoring the thought. You're simply remembering that it's not you. Advaita Vedanta doesn't ask you to fight the mind. It invites you to see clearly, to see that the thoughts can continue, but they no longer have to carry you with them. The awareness behind the thoughts, that steady presence, is where you truly live. It doesn't change when the mood changes. It doesn't rise and fall with the events of the day. It remains calm, open, unmoved. Resting in this awareness is like coming home. You don't have to try. You don't have to perform. You don't even have to understand it fully. You only have to notice that something in you has always been watching. That same something is watching now, quietly, gently, without judgment. Let yourself breathe a little slower. Let the mind continue its movements without resistance. If a thought arises, notice it. Let it be. If another follows, notice that too. And notice that something in you is seeing all of it, calmly, without getting pulled in. This is not detachment. It's not distance. It's closeness of a different kind. It's intimacy with the present moment. It's the realization that you are not the content of your mind, but the container. Not the noise, but the quiet in which the noise appears. And when you rest in that quiet, the mind begins to soften. Not because you silenced it, but because you stopped believing everything it said. You stopped needing to identify with each passing thought. You stopped giving all your energy to things that don't last. You are not the thought. You are the witness. Stay here, in that awareness, for a while. Let your breath guide you back when you drift. Let your body relax without effort. Let the space between thoughts feel like home. You've carried enough today. You've thought enough. The awareness behind those thoughts has not changed. It saw you through the whole day, and it is still here, just as steady, just as peaceful, just as patient. Let the fluctuations of the mind fade gently into the background. Let yourself rest in the part of you that doesn't need anything added or taken away. That doesn't need fixing or improvement. That simply is. The thoughts may still come. They may even grow louder for a while. But you are not them. You are the one watching. You are the one resting quietly behind the movement. The same awareness that was there before the thoughts began, and the same one that will remain after they pass. Let your shoulders drop. Let your breath be soft. Let your awareness widen. You don't need to grasp. You don't need to figure anything out. You are already resting in the place where thoughts cannot disturb you. You are already the peace you were looking for. You don't need to become anyone else. You don't need to chase stillness. You are the stillness. Let yourself feel that now. Let the mind do what it does, without needing to follow. Let the breath carry you gently, like a quiet rhythm beneath everything else. Let yourself drift, if you wish. Let sleep come, if it will. And if it doesn't, that's all right too. You are still resting. You are not your thoughts. You are the one who sees. And that is enough. Sometimes the more we try to quiet the mind, the louder it seems to get. We notice every little thought, every flicker of distraction, and we try harder. We tell ourselves to be calm, to focus, to relax. And in doing so, we stir up even more restlessness. Alan Watts understood this paradox clearly. He once said, "Trying to quiet the mind is like trying to smooth water with a flat iron. The effort itself becomes the problem. The harder we try, the more turbulence we create. The mind is like water. It settles on its own when left undisturbed. But when we press down on it, when we grip tightly, it ripples even more. That's the trap of trying too hard to relax. It turns rest into a task, peace into something to accomplish. But real quiet doesn't come from effort. It comes from softening, from stepping back, from letting the water settle by itself. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. You don't need to stop thinking. You don't need to push your thoughts away. Just notice them. Let them come and go without adding pressure. You're not here to control the moment. You're here to be with it, gently, without force. Alan Watts spoke often about letting go, not giving up, not turning away, but releasing the need to manipulate every part of the experience. He reminded us that peace doesn't arrive when we conquer the mind, but when we stop interfering with it, when we allow it to move as it wants and return quietly to the awareness that sees it all. You don't need to hold so tightly anymore. Your thoughts might be busy tonight. Your body might feel unsettled. That's okay. You're not doing anything wrong. There is no right way to fall into stillness. There's only being here, without resistance. The mind will do what it does. Let it. The more you leave it alone, the more it begins to quiet, naturally. Stillness doesn't mean silence. It means not fighting the noise. It means letting your thoughts pass like wind across the surface of a lake, felt but not held. You are the lake, not the wind. You don't need to chase the breeze. You don't need to flatten the waves. Alan Watts often reminded people that life and the mind itself are not problems to be solved. They are experiences to be allowed. So instead of asking how to get rid of your thoughts, try something softer. Ask how it feels to simply let them be. Ask what it's like to sit beside your thoughts without needing to change them. Let yourself breathe now without controlling the breath. Let your awareness widen. The thoughts that rise are not obstacles. They're just movement. And you don't need to follow every ripple. You can stay right here, in the space that watches, the space that knows how to rest without needing to make anything perfect. Trying to smooth the water only stirs it more. You're allowed to stop trying. You're allowed to do nothing at all. And in doing nothing, something soft begins to happen. The tension begins to ease. The breath settles. The space between thoughts grows larger. Not because you forced it to, but because you finally stepped back. This is what Watts meant. Not to give up on peace, but to let it come in its own time. To understand that the mind isn't a machine to fix. It's a living thing, like the ocean. And even when it's busy, even when it's loud, it's not broken. It doesn't need to be forced into calm. It needs to be met with patience. You don't have to smooth the water tonight. You only have to sit beside it, quietly, kindly, without judgment. Let your body be at ease now. Let your thoughts drift without grasping at them. Let your mind move through whatever it needs to, while you rest in the part of you that's not disturbed by the movement. The stillness is already here, not as something you create, but something you uncover. It's what remains when you stop pressing, when you stop ironing the waves. Let that stillness hold you. Sleep if you wish. Stay awake if you must. But let go of the pressure to make either happen. The water will smooth itself. The mind will settle. And you are already resting. The mind often rushes to label what it sees. Good, bad, success, failure. It reacts quickly, forming judgments without pause. It wants to sort the world into clear categories, to make sense of every moment through preference or fear. But Jiddu Krishnamurti offered another way of seeing. He said, "Observation without evaluation is the highest form of intelligence. A way of meeting life not through the lens of opinion, but through calm presence. Just watching. Just being with what is, without the need to name it. This kind of observation is gentle. It doesn't ask for effort. It doesn't ask you to stop thoughts or pretend you feel something you don't. It simply invites you to notice, without reacting, without fixing, without comparing. When the mind lets go of its need to evaluate, it begins to rest. It becomes a quiet witness. And in that witnessing, a different kind of clarity begins to appear. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. You don't need to decide what everything means right now. You don't need to place a label on every thought or emotion. Sometimes, just noticing is enough. Noticing the rise and fall of breath, the sensation of the body settling into stillness, the passing shape of a memory, the flicker of a thought. All of it can be observed without being judged. And in doing that, you begin to find peace. Not because everything is perfect, but because you've stopped arguing with the moment. You don't need to hold so tightly anymore. Krishnamurti's teaching wasn't about removing thoughts. It was about seeing them with space. When you look at your experience without judging it, you begin to understand it more deeply. You see the fear without becoming it. You notice the tiredness without resenting it. You acknowledge discomfort without trying to escape. This kind of seeing brings a quiet kind of intelligence, the kind that doesn't rush to conclusions, the kind that understands without words. Tonight, as the body unwinds, let that kind of seeing guide you. If a thought arises, watch it. Let it move across the field of your awareness like a cloud across the sky. You don't have to do anything about it. You don't have to change it or solve it. Just see it. Just allow it. That's enough. The mind is often trained to evaluate everything, to look for danger, to seek reward, to constantly measure the value of what's happening. But that habit, while useful in moments of urgency, creates noise when you're trying to rest. It keeps you locked in a cycle of reaction. But when you step back and observe without deciding, something settles. The tension begins to release. The breath deepens. The world feels less like something to manage and more like something to witness. Observation without evaluation is not cold or distant. It's warm, compassionate. It makes room for all things without needing to control them. It says, "I see you," without needing to change or fix. It allows experience to be what it is. And in that allowance, it brings peace. Let yourself feel that now. Let your thoughts be as they are. Let your body speak in sensation. You don't need to judge your rest or measure how well you're sleeping. You're already doing enough just by being here. Let your mind soften around the moment. Let the evaluations go quiet. Let the seeing remain. You are not your reactions. You are not your evaluations. You are the quiet space that sees without resistance. You are the witness that stays steady, no matter what passes through. Krishnamurti often spoke of freedom, not the kind that comes from getting what we want, but the kind that comes from no longer being caught in automatic reaction. That freedom begins in this moment, when you choose not to judge, when you choose to let what is be. Even now, you can rest in that freedom. You don't have to approve or disapprove of your thoughts. You don't have to assess the quality of your relaxation. You can simply observe, gently, kindly, with care. Let your breath come and go without shaping it. Let your body fall into the surface beneath you. Let the day dissolve without needing to explain it. You're not here to figure anything out. You're here to see clearly. And in that seeing, you are already free. Sleep if it comes. Drift if it doesn't. Stay present in the space that watches. No evaluation is needed. Only awareness. Only rest. Not everything needs a reaction. Not every moment asks for a decision. There is often a small pause, a quiet gap, just before we respond. Viktor Frankl, the Austrian psychiatrist and philosopher, described this space with care and hope. Between stimulus and response, there is a space, he said. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. That space may be small, but it holds something valuable, a gentle invitation to rest, not to avoid life, but to approach it with calm. And tonight, that space is here for you too. When the world moves fast, that space can seem invisible. You feel something, and then you react. A comment stings, and the body tightens. A worry enters, and the mind starts running. But underneath all that is a soft, quiet pause, a place where you can breathe, where you can stay still before rushing into action. In that moment, you don't have to decide anything. You don't have to explain or solve. You can simply rest in the pause, in that little bit of space between what happens and what you do next. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. Frankl understood this space not as something abstract, but as something deeply personal. Even in the hardest circumstances, he found that no one could take away that inner freedom, the ability to choose his response. And that freedom, he said, is where peace begins. Not when everything is fixed, but when we stop living at the mercy of every thought, every feeling, every outside push. You don't need to hold so tightly anymore. When a thought comes, you can give it a little space before reacting. When an emotion rises, you don't have to do anything right away. You can breathe first. You can wait. You can rest. That space doesn't ask you to become someone new. It simply reminds you that you are not ruled by every passing wave. You are allowed to pause. In that pause, something opens. A kind of quiet intelligence, a calm awareness. It doesn't tell you what to do. It just offers a moment where you're not being pulled or pushed, where you can return to yourself, even if just for a breath. Let yourself feel that now. You've had enough movement for one day, enough choices, enough thoughts about what comes next. This moment asks nothing of you. It simply offers a quiet space. Between what the day has given and what tomorrow might bring, there is only this breath, this stillness, this small gap where nothing is expected and everything can soften. Frankl believed that in this space lies our freedom. But tonight, let it be enough that this space is also a place to rest. You don't need to be perfect in it. You don't need to use it wisely or make something of it. You're allowed to just be in it, quiet, unburdened, letting the world drift a little farther away. The mind may still want to evaluate, to decide, to answer. That's all right. Let the mind do what it does, but you don't need to follow it. You can stay in the pause. Let the thoughts come and go without choosing a side. Let the body breathe without telling it how. Let the moment pass through you and stay in the space between. This is not stillness as avoidance. It's stillness as presence. A deep kind of presence that says, I am here, and I don't need to react right now. That kind of presence is powerful and also tender. It holds you without demand. If sleep comes, let it. If it doesn't, that's okay too. Stay in the space between what was and what will be, between the breath in and the breath out, between all the things you've been carrying and the quiet permission to let them rest. Let the breath slow, let the hands loosen, let the thoughts fade gently into the background. You are already in the space Frankl spoke of. You are not your reactions. You are not your thoughts. You are the stillness behind them. You are the presence that chooses how to meet the next moment. But for now, there is nothing to meet, nothing to choose. Only this space. And in this space, you are safe. Let the moment be just this, just stillness, just rest. You don't have to move forward. You don't have to go back. You are already home. Anxiety can feel like something is terribly wrong. The racing thoughts, the tight chest, the restlessness that doesn't seem to come from anywhere specific. But Søren Kierkegaard saw it differently. He didn't see anxiety as proof that something was broken. Instead, he called it the dizziness of freedom. When faced with infinite possibilities, when realizing that you are free to choose, the mind can feel overwhelmed, not because you are failing, but because you are standing at the edge of what's possible. That feeling of disorientation isn't weakness. It's a sign that you are free. Kierkegaard believed that anxiety arises not from danger, but from potential. the mind stares out at all the different paths it could take, and the weight of that freedom can feel like too much. But that doesn't mean you have to react. It doesn't mean you need to figure it all out. You're allowed to pause. You're allowed to take one step back, to rest in the space before choice. There is no urgency in this moment. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. Freedom is not always light and exciting. Sometimes it's heavy. When you realize that you're not trapped, that no one else is deciding for you, that the next move is truly yours, that realization can feel like vertigo. But it's also a gift, to be able to choose, to reflect, to become. The dizziness is a sign that you're not stuck, that your life isn't fixed in one direction. But you don't need to rush into any direction right now. You can stay still. You don't need to hold so tightly anymore. When anxiety comes, the instinct is often to fight it, to wrestle it down or push it away. But Kierkegaard suggested something different. Don't panic. Let the anxiety exist, but don't collapse into it. Just sit with it. See what it wants to show you. Not as a threat, but as a signal that you're close to something meaningful, that you're becoming aware of your own freedom, your own role in shaping your life. Even in this quiet moment, your mind may reach for something, some problem to solve, some future to control, some past to reanalyze. But you don't have to go with it. You can stay right here, where nothing must be solved. There is no deadline in this breath. No final answer to find tonight. Only a soft understanding that it's okay not to know yet. It's okay to rest in uncertainty. Kierkegaard didn't offer quick solutions. He wasn't trying to make discomfort disappear. Instead, he suggested that anxiety was part of the human experience, a necessary tension that points to the deep responsibility we carry in shaping who we are. But responsibility doesn't have to mean pressure. It can mean quiet courage, a slow readiness, a willingness to meet life as it unfolds, not with panic, but with presence. Tonight, you don't need to decide who you are. You don't need to map out every path or resolve every fear. You only need to breathe, to be here, to feel the dizziness of freedom and stay grounded anyway. You are not in danger. You are simply awake to possibility. You can let the thoughts pass through. You can feel the body soften. The world will keep turning. You are allowed to rest. In this stillness, something opens up. A space between fear and action, between restlessness and clarity. In that space, your true self waits, not as something to be built, but as something already here, already watching, already whole. You don't have to become anyone tonight. You don't have to chase meaning. You can let it rise slowly, over time, like dawn. The dizziness of freedom does not mean you are lost. It means you are alive. And aliveness includes moments of unease, of hesitation, of wondering what comes next. But this moment doesn't need an answer. Only acceptance, only breath, only peace. Let it be enough to rest now, to feel the weight lift, if only for a while. The mind doesn't need to be clear tonight. The future doesn't need to be known. Just rest in the freedom to be still. Rest in the truth that you are not broken. You are simply human. And in your humanness, there is beauty, even in the dizziness. Stay here, no decision required, no clarity demanded, just this breath, this quiet. Let the night hold you. Let the uncertainty loosen its grip. You are free, and you are safe to rest. To Simone Weil, attention was not just a mental habit or a tool for work. It was sacred. For her, True attention wasn't about focus in the way we usually think of it, like solving a problem, fixing something, or getting something done. It was quieter than that, softer, closer to a form of reverence. When the mind becomes still, when it stops chasing and striving and simply watches, without trying to change or control, something deep shifts inside. That, she believed, is when we begin to pray, even if no words are spoken. Attention, in this deeper sense, means making space. It means allowing what is in front of you to exist fully, without interruption. No rushing to interpret, no rush to respond, just presence, just the offering of your awareness. In that offering, the self steps back. The usual chatter, the evaluations, the judgments, they all fade. And what's left is a kind of openness that resembles devotion. Not devotion to a deity, necessarily, but to life itself, to reality as it is. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. There is a restfulness in attention when it becomes this quiet. It doesn't demand effort. In fact, effort breaks it. Real attention arises when striving ceases. That's why it's so close to rest, and why it can be so healing. To give attention in this way is to say, this moment matters. This experience, whatever it is worthy of being seen. That includes yourself, your breath, your thoughts, even your restlessness, even your fatigue. You don't need to hold so tightly anymore. Most of the time, our attention is pulled and scattered. We give it to notifications, to worries, to expectations. Simone Weil saw this as a kind of suffering, because it separates us from the real. She believed that education, healing, even love, all begin with attention. Not attention as control, but as surrender, as the decision to really be here, not half-present, not multitasking, but gently, completely aware. Imagine giving that kind of attention to your own tiredness, to your body, right now, lying still. What if you didn't try to fix it or explain it, or resist it, but simply gave it space? The kind of space you'd give a sleeping child, or a friend in grief. Quiet, patient, full of care. That too can be prayer. Will also believed that attention, in its truest form, was a way of loving others. Not by solving their problems or giving advice, but simply by being with them in their reality, without judgment, without interruption, just presence. That's how she believed we connect with something beyond ourselves, by setting aside our ego long enough to let someone else's truth enter fully into our awareness. And it works the same with our own lives. When you stop to attend, not with stress, but with softness, you start to hear what's really there. Maybe it's an ache you've ignored, a fear you've pushed down, or maybe it's just the sound of your own breath, slow and steady, asking for nothing. That stillness is not empty. It's full of quiet meaning. Simone Weil spent much of her life in contemplation. She spoke of attention as a kind of offering, a space in which the soul meets what is, without filter, without defense. In that openness, something sacred happens. You don't need to call it prayer. You don't need to name it at all. But you can feel it. In those moments when you are no longer reaching or resisting, but simply aware and at peace. So tonight, maybe you can let yourself give that kind of attention, not to your tasks or your goals, but to the simple truth of being here, of breathing, of letting go. There is nothing to fix, nothing to prove, just the quiet miracle of existing right now in this space between effort and sleep. Let it be enough to notice the rise and fall of your chest, the feel of the bed beneath you, the way your shoulders slowly soften. All of it matters. All of it is worthy of your gentle attention. When the mind wanders, and it will, that's okay. Attention doesn't mean rigid focus. It means returning again and again with care, just as you are. That returning, soft, slow, without punishment, is its own kind of prayer. It says, I am here, I am listening, I am open. There is no perfect way to rest, no perfect way to be present. Only the quiet willingness to try again, to offer your attention to this moment, just as it is. And in doing so, to discover the sacredness that Simon Weil knew was always there, hidden not in grand gestures, but in stillness, in slowness, in care. Let yourself rest in that kind of awareness now. You don't need to do anything more. Just be with yourself, without demands, and let that be your prayer. To be still does not mean to be frozen or lifeless. It does not mean to withdraw from the world or escape what is happening. Stillness, in the sense Martin Heidegger spoke of, is something deeper. It is not about removing movement. It is about coming into fuller contact with the truth of your own existence. It is about letting yourself simply be, without interference. Heidegger often reflected on what it means to exist. Not just to act or think, but to be. At the heart of his thinking was the idea that we are always thrown into the world, into time, into culture, into responsibilities, and that we spend much of our lives caught up in what he called idle talk and distraction. This scattered movement of everyday life can feel necessary, but it often pulls us away from something much more essential: presence. Stillness, in this deeper way, is not the opposite of motion. It is a kind of inner contact with being itself. It is what happens when a person stops trying to fill every gap with noise or movement, and instead rests in awareness of what already is. Stillness allows the world to show itself, not in pieces, but in wholeness. It allows the self to appear as more than a collection of thoughts and roles. You don't need to hold so tightly anymore. Many people think rest means doing nothing. But real rest, the kind that nourishes the spirit, often begins in this kind of stillness. When you stop measuring or analyzing and just settle into where you are, a different kind of clarity emerges. You don't need to chase it. You just have to be willing to notice. This is what Heidegger meant by presence. Not a performance, not a posture, but the quiet realization that you are already here, and that being here is enough. This kind of stillness is not something you can force. In fact, trying too hard only gets in the way. It arises naturally when striving falls away, when there's no more need to reach or compare. Heidegger believed that this state of presence helps reveal what is truly meaningful, not according to culture or custom, but according to your own grounded sense of truth. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. Stillness is not passive, it's attentive. In stillness, you can begin to hear the quiet signals that are usually buried. What you really feel, what you truly value, what matters now and not later. These things don't shout. They come gently, but only when there's space to receive them. And that space opens when you're willing to stop filling every silence, stop rushing past every pause. Sometimes the most honest thing you can do is sit still and let the moment speak. Not just the outer moment, but the inner one. How your breath flows, how your body settles, how your mind, though busy at first, begins to soften. Heidegger called this a return to authentic being, a way of being that isn't shaped by outside demands or empty habits, but by your own lived experience, the kind you don't explain, but quietly understand. You might not even realize how much you've been carrying until you stop. And in that stillness, the weight begins to shift. Not because a solution appears, but because you're no longer fighting the present. Stillness doesn't remove life's struggles, but it changes your relationship to them. Instead of reacting, you begin to respond. Instead of escaping, you begin to engage, gently, thoughtfully, without pressure. You're allowed to rest, not just physically, but deeply, to let go of needing to be anything other than what you are. Heidegger's philosophy invites this kind of quiet honesty, a space where there is nothing to perform, nothing to correct, just the slow return to presence. Stillness, then, is not what happens when everything is finally perfect. It's what happens when you stop waiting for perfection, when you let go of needing life to feel a certain way before you allow yourself to be at peace. It's already here, beneath the movement, beneath the story, beneath the doing. All that's left is being, and that is not small. It is spacious, real, and enough. So now, as your body rests and your breath slows, you don't need to change anything. You don't need to earn this moment. It's already yours. Let yourself rest in it, not as a break from life, but as part of life, as a return to something steady and quiet within you. Stillness does not erase the world. It makes it visible. It draws you close to the heart of things, to the part of you that knows how to be present without effort. And that presence is not something to reach. It's something to remember. Let yourself be still. Now, let the presence of being rise gently within you, not as a thought, not as a goal, but as the simple truth of resting here, in this moment. You're already here. That's enough. Let it be. Dogen's invitation to just sit may sound simple, but it holds a deep and gentle truth that speaks directly to the exhausted heart. In the Zen tradition, sitting is not a way to achieve something. It is not a means to an end. It is the end itself. Sitting in full presence becomes a complete expression of being. There is nowhere to go, nothing to become. In that stillness, you are already whole. So much of modern life is built around doing, fixing, improving. The mind is trained to chase outcomes, to measure worth by progress, to define peace as something that comes only after all problems are solved. But Dogen offers a different way. He asks us to pause the striving, to sit without needing to succeed at sitting, to let go of every plan, even the one that says, I must learn how to let go. To just sit, as Dogen taught, is to be entirely where you are, without commentary. Not to become silent, but to notice the silence that has always been there underneath the thoughts. When you stop trying to make the moment better or different, something subtle changes. You begin to sense the fullness that is already present, a kind of gentle enoughness that doesn't need to be earned or built. You don't need to hold so tightly anymore. In this sitting, there is no goal. There is no expectation. Breathing happens. Thoughts come and go. The body rests. That is enough. Dogen didn't suggest sitting as a method of control. He saw it as a way of honoring reality, of allowing life to unfold without interference, the way clouds pass through the sky without resistance. It's not always easy to sit still. The mind may resist. It may fill the quiet with urgency, doubt, or restlessness. But Dogen's teaching reminds us that we don't need to silence the mind. We only need to stop identifying with it. The thoughts can move, just as the breath moves, just as life itself moves. Stillness isn't the absence of thought. It's the absence of clinging to thought. To sit in this way is to come home to yourself, not the self that others see or the self you try to improve, but the self that it simply is, undisturbed, unchanged, beneath every passing emotion. This is not a self-made of stories or accomplishments. It is the quiet awareness that watches everything come and go. Sitting becomes an act of remembrance, not of memory, but of presence. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. You don't have to do anything with the moment. You don't have to explain it or improve it. Let it be as it is. The breath comes in and goes out. Sounds may rise and fall. Thoughts may wander, then return. All of it is part of sitting. You don't need to manage it. You don't need to succeed at relaxing. The sitting is already complete, simply because it is happening. In Zen, this kind of sitting is called shikantaza. Just sitting. Not meditating in the way the word is often used as a technique, but sitting with full acceptance, with full presence, as if saying, I will not run from this moment. I will not try to control it. I will not turn away from myself. Even if discomfort arises, even if the mind races, I will remain seated in the truth that I am already enough. Dogen wrote, to study the self is to forget the self. To forget the self is to be awakened by all things. And in sitting, without grasping or pushing, this begins to happen. The boundaries soften. The separation between you and the world, between thought and being, begins to dissolve. In stillness, the mind quiets, not because it is forced to, but because it has nothing left to argue with. You're not here to master the moment. You are here to meet it. The posture itself reflects this approach. Sitting upright, but relaxed. Alert, yet unstrained. The body becomes a reflection of the inner state. Stable, open, calm. The hands rest gently. The gaze softens. There's no need to close yourself off, nor to reach outward. You're simply allowing everything to be as it is. That includes yourself. You're not a project to be fixed. You're not a problem to be solved. When you sit in this way, with no intention except to be present, you're affirming something quietly radical, that your being has worth without performance, that you belong here, in this breath, in this body, in this moment, without needing to change anything. There's a tenderness in that, a quiet relief, a sense of rest that doesn't depend on external comfort, but on the release of inner pressure. You're not trying to win peace. You're simply stepping aside so peace can reveal itself. Just sit. That's what Dogen said. And if you let that be enough, something begins to open. Maybe not suddenly, maybe not with fireworks, but gradually, like the breath deepening after a long day, like tension loosening in your chest, like silence becoming familiar again. The kind of silence that feels like home. You're not alone in this. Across centuries, countless others have sat in this same spirit, quietly, without fanfare, letting the sitting be its own meaning. You are part of that, part of something ancient and still alive, a lineage not of words, but of presence. So for now, there's nothing to fix. Nothing to plan. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to sit. And in that sitting, to rediscover the wholeness that's been waiting underneath all the doing. You're here. That's enough. Let the sitting speak for you now. Wabi-sabi is not a system or a doctrine. It is a way of seeing, an invitation to appreciate what is natural, fleeting, and imperfect. It reminds us that beauty does not need to be flawless to be whole. In fact, the most tender, honest kind of beauty often comes from the cracks, the stains, the signs of time and wear. There is no need to polish the world smooth. What is rough can still be complete. In many cultures, there is a strong pull toward symmetry, permanence, and control. The modern world often tells us to fix, to perfect, to optimize every part of life until nothing is out of place. But the wabi-sabi way whispers something quieter. That peace doesn't come from controlling what's around us. It comes from accepting what already is. It comes from noticing the quiet elegance of things that were never meant to last forever. You don't need to hold so tightly anymore. In the wabi-sabi view, the chipped bowl is not a mistake. It carries a history in its broken edge. The uneven brushstroke on a handmade cup is not a flaw. It is the mark of human hands. The withered leaf resting on a stone is not something to sweep away. It is part of the moment. To rest in wabi-sabi is to soften the gaze, to allow things to be as they are, even when they are slightly worn, slightly off balance, slightly incomplete. Perfection is brittle. It demands constant maintenance. But imperfection allows us to breathe. When we stop needing everything to meet a standard, we make space for life to show up honestly. A room doesn't need to be spotless to feel welcoming. A thought doesn't need to be fully formed to be meaningful. A day doesn't need to be productive to have been worthwhile. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. Wabi-sabi invites us to sit beside what is unresolved without rushing to repair it. Not because we are indifferent, but because we are gentle. There is wisdom in leaving space. There is clarity in letting things settle on their own. A puddle of water becomes still when we stop stirring it. A restless mind finds calm when it is no longer told it needs to change. You are not broken just because you are tired. You are not less whole because you carry scars. Wabi-sabi sees the person in their fullness, not in their unfinished goals or unpolished traits. It sees the aging face and calls it beautiful. It sees the quiet life and calls it enough. This way of being is soft but not fragile. It doesn't deny pain, but it doesn't rush to erase it either. It acknowledges that everything passes, youth, seasons, moods, even the people we love, and instead of resisting that truth, it honors it. Wabi-sabi teaches us to hold the impermanent with tenderness, not fear. There's a Japanese tradition called kintsugi, where broken pottery is mended with gold. The cracks are not hidden, they're highlighted. The repair becomes part of the story, a visible reminder that something broken can still be whole, and even more beautiful for having been repaired. But wabi-sabi takes it one step further. Sometimes things don't need to be mended at all. Sometimes the crack itself is enough. You don't need to fix what isn't broken. The desire to be better is not wrong, but when it turns into a constant pressure, it begins to erode the joy of simply being. Wabi-sabi is not against change. It just doesn't demand it. It allows time to pass naturally, people to grow in their own rhythm, and objects to age with grace. In this mindset, the old chair with worn fabric becomes a companion, not a flaw. The quiet day with nothing scheduled becomes a gift, not a waste. When you slow down and look around with wabi-sabi eyes, you begin to notice small things that were invisible before. The uneven pattern of raindrops on a window, the way the light fades unevenly across the wall, the rhythm of your own breath, steady, imperfect, and yet so alive. Rest becomes less about withdrawing and more about arriving. Arriving here, now, as you are. This way of seeing is not always easy. The habit of fixing is strong. The inner voice that says you should be more, do more, improve more, it runs deep. But wabi-sabi doesn't ask you to silence that voice. It simply invites you to notice it, and then gently choose something else. To choose softness over striving, stillness over scrambling, acceptance over perfection. What if you let go of the idea that you need to get everything right before you can rest? What if this moment, with its uneven rhythm and quiet imperfections, is already enough? That's the quiet wisdom of wabi-sabi. It does not shout, it does not rush, it simply remains, like an old tree in the fog, holding space for you to slow down and just be. You don't need to change anything right now. You don't need to tidy your thoughts, smooth your emotions, or rearrange your life. You can rest in the simple truth that you are already here, breathing, present, and that is enough. In wabi-sabi, life is not a puzzle to be solved. It is a path to be walked gently, with open eyes and a willing heart. And as you walk, or as you sit, or as you lie down and listen to these words, you might begin to feel it. The peace that doesn't come from fixing everything, but from seeing it clearly and letting it be. Let yourself rest in that peace now. Nothing is missing. Nothing needs to be done. Let this be the moment that doesn't need to be improved. Let this be the breath that tells you you're already home. Mono no aware is the quiet feeling that arises when we recognize that everything is temporary. It is not sadness exactly, though it can carry the softness of sorrow. It is a gentle, almost invisible emotion. A quiet awareness that everything is passing and that it is beautiful because it is passing. This feeling does not demand an answer. It simply invites presence. It asks us to see clearly, to feel fully, and then to let go. To live in harmony with Mono no aware is to stop resisting the flow of time. It means no longer bracing against change or trying to hold on to what will inevitably slip away. The flower blooms for a few days and then falls. The voice of someone we love echoes for a time, then fades. The warmth of the afternoon light touches the floor differently as the day wanes. None of this can be held, none of it can be saved, but it can be witnessed. You don't need to hold so tightly anymore. This awareness of impermanence is not a reason for despair. It is the reason we treasure things more deeply. When we understand that the people we care about will not be here forever, we speak to them with more care. When we understand that our own time is limited, we begin to live with more attention. The present becomes luminous, not because it will last, but because we know it won't. This is not a lesson to master, but a way of feeling that can only arise slowly. It doesn't come from thought alone, but from experience. Watching the leaves turn in autumn, hearing laughter fade down the hallway, realizing that a moment that once seemed ordinary has become precious in memory. Mono no aware teaches us to bow to time, not fight it. In Western traditions, rest is often seen as a pause between actions, a break, a recovery. But here, rest is a form of harmony with the movement of life. When we stop clenching around time, when we stop demanding that moments last longer than they naturally do, we begin to rest, not by escaping change, but by yielding to it. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. When we resist impermanence, we grow tense. We try to preserve joy before it slips away. We rehearse conversations that are already over. We regret things we can no longer reach. But all this resistance creates a kind of friction inside us, a pressure. Mono no aware suggests another path. It doesn't ask us to stop loving what we love. It only asks us to stop trying to make it stay. The cherry blossom is one of the clearest symbols of this principle. It blooms brightly, briefly, and then it falls. That fall is not a failure. It is the fulfillment of its beauty. The tree doesn't mourn the blossom. It doesn't clutch at it. It simply continues through the seasons, letting each moment unfold in its time. You can do the same. There may be things in your life that feel like they are slipping away, a phase that is ending, a friendship changing shape, a version of yourself that no longer fits. It's easy to grieve these things, and that grief is not wrong. But beneath that feeling, there may also be space for acceptance, for noticing how the very act of letting go is part of what makes something meaningful. Nothing needs to be rushed. Nothing needs to be extended beyond its time. A quiet evening, a single breath, a fleeting emotion, they can all be enough just as they are. When you stop trying to hold on so tightly, you begin to feel the richness of what's here. Mono no aware is not a rule or a command. It is a way of seeing, a way of softening the edges of expectation, a way of letting the rhythm of your life become more gentle, more forgiving, more honest. You are not expected to be unmoved. You are simply allowed to feel. And when the moment has passed, you are allowed to feel again something new. If you sit with yourself now, you may notice memories rising, things that are no longer part of your day-to-day life, but that still live in your mind, in your body. They don't need to be erased. They don't need to be revived. They can be held lightly, like pages in a book that has already been read. Let them come. Let them pass. The beauty of impermanence is that it makes space. When one moment ends, another begins. And if we don't use our energy trying to freeze the past or predict the future, we can begin to experience the now as something more than a stepping stone. It becomes a place we can actually live. You don't need to rush ahead to find peace. It is already here, in this changing breath, in this quiet awareness. The more you relax into the reality that nothing stays the same, the more deeply you can rest. The struggle fades, the striving quiets. What remains is something more subtle and tender, something real. Let yourself rest in that softness. Let yourself feel the quiet truth that everything moves, everything fades, and still, everything matters. You are not missing anything by letting go. You are simply stepping into the rhythm of life, one breath at a time. There is a wisdom that comes from the earth itself, quiet, grounded, and deeply patient. Among many Native American traditions, healing is not always found in effort or movement. Sometimes the best medicine is to do nothing, to simply stop, to let the earth catch up to you. This isn't about laziness or avoidance. It's about alignment. When life becomes too fast, too noisy, too full of pushing and pulling, we can lose track of the natural rhythm we're meant to move with. The world around us doesn't need to be conquered or hurried. It needs to be felt. And to feel it, we have to slow down. Doing nothing isn't the absence of activity. It's the presence of listening. It's giving yourself permission to stop managing, fixing, solving, chasing. It's learning to be still enough that the wind touches your skin, the sun warms your back, and the quiet inside you has space to breathe. In that stillness, your body remembers what balance feels like. Your spirit begins to settle. Your mind starts to trust that rest is allowed. There's a deep intelligence in the land. It doesn't ask questions. It doesn't rush the seasons. Trees don't force themselves to grow faster. Rivers don't argue with the banks they follow. The animals don't ask whether they're being productive enough. They live according to a rhythm much older than thought. And when we stop doing, we begin to move closer to that rhythm, not by planning it, but by allowing it to carry us. You don't need to prove anything right now. You're already part of something whole. To rest, is to remember. To remember that you are not separate from the world you walk in. That the same life that moves through the sky and the soil moves through you too. You don't have to earn your place in this world. You already belong. And sometimes the most powerful way to return to that truth is to stop moving and let the land hold you. There is nothing to fix in this moment. There is only breath. This way of resting isn't passive. It's receptive. It's an act of trust, of letting go of control so that life can unfold on its own terms. In many Native American traditions, healing circles are formed not to force resolution, but to create space for it. People sit, share, wait. The power isn't in the speaking. It's in the silence that comes after. The silence where insight lands quietly, like a leaf on water. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. Doing nothing is not about emptiness. It's about spaciousness. It's the kind of rest that allows what's true to rise to the surface. When we're always reacting, always busy, always distracted, we can't hear the subtle messages our body is trying to send us. We can't feel the quiet stirrings of the soul. But when we pause long enough, when we really allow the earth to catch up to us, something changes. Our thoughts soften, our heart rate slows. We begin to feel again, not with urgency, but with depth. There's a teaching in many indigenous cultures that speaks of walking in a good way. It means living in harmony, not just with others, but with the land, with time, with yourself. And to walk in a good way, you must be willing to stop walking sometimes. You must be willing to sit down, lean against a tree, listen to the birds, or watch the clouds drift by without asking them to mean anything. Just being there is enough. That's where healing begins. You don't need to hold so tightly anymore. Letting the earth catch up to you means letting yourself be human. Not always efficient, not always composed, not always strong. It means acknowledging that you too are a creature of rhythm, of cycles, of seasons. Some days will be fast and full. Others will be slow and quiet. And both are needed. Both are part of the dance. When you stop expecting yourself to always be on, you make room for your inner seasons to breathe. Sometimes when people feel lost, elders might tell them to return to the land. Not because it has answers written on it, but because it carries a calm that can't be found in words. To sit on the earth, to place your hands on stone or soil, is to come back to something older than thought. The earth doesn't ask you to be perfect. It asks only that you show up. And even then, it waits with patience when you can't. There's a quiet courage in doing nothing. It means facing what arises when the distractions fall away. It means being present with yourself, without expectation. And in that presence, a kind of medicine flows in. Not one that fixes or erases, but one that nourishes from the inside out. The earth doesn't need you to push, it needs you to feel. Let yourself feel the stillness in your bones. Let it settle deep, like roots growing quietly in the dark. This is your pause. This is your breath. You are not falling behind. You are simply letting the world find its way to you again. And when it does, you'll notice that you are not separate from it. You are not apart. You are part. Held. Carried. Enough. There's an old African proverb that says, "You can't chase two rabbits and rest at the same time." At first, it might sound like a warning about distraction or divided attention. But beneath that surface is a deeper message about the nature of peace, energy, and the quiet choices we make every day. The more we try to do everything at once, the more we scatter ourselves, losing not only focus, but the quiet center that holds us together. Rest doesn't come from finishing the chase. It comes from not chasing at all. Modern life often tells us to pursue more success, more goals, more solutions. But with each new target comes a subtle tension, a feeling of being stretched too thin. Like someone trying to run in opposite directions at the same time, there's an inevitable sense of strain. The body might move, but the heart grows tired, and the soul, which needs stillness to breathe, falls behind. The wisdom of the proverb lies in its simplicity. You cannot truly rest while your mind is in pursuit. You may lie down, but your thoughts will continue to run. You may close your eyes, but the chase will continue in your head. Rest requires letting go, not of everything forever, but just enough for now. It means choosing one thing, or choosing nothing at all. It means giving yourself permission to stop striving long enough to feel what peace might actually be. You don't need to be everywhere at once. Just here is enough. So often, the root of restlessness isn't what we're doing, but what we're unwilling to let go of. We carry lists in our minds, loops of unfinished tasks and unanswered questions. We hold on to what if and what next, as if they'll give us control. But all they really do is keep us running in circles, chasing multiple rabbits with no end in sight. The act of resting is not just physical stillness. It's a quiet internal decision to stop the chase. Not because the things we want aren't important, but because we are allowed to pause. The world won't collapse if we sit still for a while. Our worth doesn't diminish when we choose calm over urgency. In fact, it's often in the pause that we rediscover clarity. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. Imagine for a moment that you are in a quiet field. The rabbits are far ahead, darting in different directions. You could run after them, but instead, you sit down. You feel the earth beneath you. You listen to the wind move through the grass. You take a breath. And in that moment, nothing is chasing you. Nothing is pulling at you. You're not behind. You're simply still. And somehow, that stillness begins to feel like coming home. There is a quiet wisdom in choosing to do less. It allows you to do things with more presence. When you're not divided between competing desires or goals, you move with steadiness. Your thoughts soften, your heartbeat slows, and your energy, no longer scattered, begins to return to you. One of the most restful things you can do is to stop trying to catch everything. You won't miss your life by pausing. You'll see it more clearly. Rest isn't about escape. It's about returning to yourself, to the moment, to what actually matters. And sometimes what matters most is simply being here without needing to do anything else. You don't need to hold so tightly anymore. Let go of the idea that you must always be chasing. Let go of the belief that rest must be earned through exhaustion. You are allowed to rest now, even with unfinished things, even with imperfect progress, even when your mind tells you to keep running. When you choose rest over pursuit, you begin to notice the subtle rhythms of your own being. You notice the breath you hadn't paid attention to, the quiet hum beneath the noise, the small signals your body gives you, reminding you that it needs care, not just action. And in that awareness, there is healing. Many traditions across the world speak of this same truth, that rest is not something to wait for at the end of effort, but something to choose along the way. African wisdom teaches that presence is more valuable than pressure. That clarity comes from stillness, not speed, that peace isn't found in chasing multiple things. It's found in returning to just one or none. So let yourself be still, not because everything is finished, but because you deserve a moment to feel whole again. You were never meant to outrun your own life. You were meant to walk with it, side by side. The field is quiet now, the rabbits have gone, and you are still here, breathing, resting, enough. Tibetan philosophy reminds us, don't meditate to fix the mind, meditate to see through it. This simple sentence can ease a great deal of tension. So often, people come to rest with the idea that something must be repaired. The mind, restless or clouded, is treated like a broken machine in need of fixing. But the deeper view from Tibetan teachings encourages something softer, less forceful, less goal-driven. It invites a different relationship with thought itself, one where stillness is not a solution, but a way of seeing. There's a quiet pressure in modern life to optimize every part of our experience, even rest. We tell ourselves that if we sit in silence long enough, we'll somehow clear away the fog, sharpen our focus, and finally feel calm. But this striving quietly becomes another form of agitation. The effort to change what we feel can add another layer of resistance. And the more we resist what is, the more we exhaust ourselves. Tibetan wisdom offers a gentler way. It teaches that we don't need to fix every uncomfortable thought or chase away every shadow in the mind. Instead, we can learn to sit with them, observe them, watch them drift in and out without grasping. Meditation becomes less about achieving a better state and more about resting in awareness itself. Not forcing stillness, but allowing it to emerge naturally once the need to control fades. You don't need to hold so tightly anymore. When we sit quietly and turn inward, the mind will often react. It may rush forward with memories, questions, worries. It may loop through things unfinished or stir emotions just beneath the surface. At first, it may feel like meditation is making the mind louder, not quieter. But in truth, the noise was already there. Stillness simply made it easier to hear. And in hearing clearly, without panic, something begins to loosen. You are not your thoughts. You never were. Tibetan teachings encourage the idea of the mind as sky, and thoughts as clouds, passing, changing, never permanent. Some clouds are heavy and dark, others are light and barely noticeable, but none of them touch the vastness of the sky itself, the awareness that notices them. That's you. And that part of you doesn't need fixing. It just needs remembering. To see through the mind means to notice how often it tries to protect, predict, or control. It means recognizing the habits of judging, comparing, fearing, and rather than arguing with them or pushing them away, you simply watch. When you stop trying to improve the experience and instead rest in the observing, the chase ends. A soft clarity emerges. You begin to see the patterns for what they are. Thoughts, not truths. Stories, not the whole story. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. There's no need to meditate perfectly. There's no gold medal for having an empty mind. Sometimes sitting with yourself means noticing every restless thought and still choosing to stay. Sometimes it means observing the rising anxiety and not reaching for a distraction. And sometimes the mind is quiet from the beginning, but that too passes. The practice isn't about winning against your own thoughts. It's about no longer mistaking them for something they're not. Even difficult emotions can be met with this gentleness. Fear, irritation, sadness, they don't need to be chased away to find peace. Tibetan philosophy offers the insight that peace isn't the absence of feeling, but the freedom to witness whatever arises without becoming lost in it. Just as a traveller can observe a landscape without needing to change it, you can observe your mind without needing to fix it. Rest becomes possible when there's no longer an internal fight, when you stop expecting your mind to behave and start seeing it with compassion. The space between thoughts expands. A breath becomes a resting place. A pause becomes a quiet return. Even in the middle of discomfort, there can be peace, not because everything has gone away, but because you've stopped struggling against it. You're allowed to simply be. The point of meditation in this view is not to produce serenity like a result. It's to understand that serenity arises naturally when resistance softens. The more gently we meet ourselves, the more ease we find. Rest is not something you force, it's something you remember. So sit, if you like. Not to get anywhere, not to feel any particular way, but just to be. Let the thoughts move and stay seated anyway. Let the feelings rise and remain at ease. Let the mind try to solve, and don't follow. You don't need to improve this moment. You only need to be with it. Like looking through clear water, instead of trying to clean the river, awareness reveals more by stillness than by struggle. The truth of your being has never been the content of your thoughts. It is the spaciousness in which those thoughts come and go. It is the quiet presence beneath all that changes. And it is always here. You don't have to do anything more tonight. You've done enough. Let yourself rest, not as a reward, but as a natural return. You are already held, already whole, already home.